Patience, I'd like to call the March 3rd meeting of Planning and Zoning to order at 7:17 p.m. Sorry. Also, throughout the meeting, it would be helpful if anyone who wants to speak to line up along that wall to avoid all the cables and camera. Item 2, citizen communication. The Planning and Zoning Commission welcomes comment on items relevant to the Planning and Zoning Commission not already scheduled on tonight's agenda. In accordance with the Texas Attorney General's opinion, any public comment that is made on an item that is not on the published final agenda will only be heard by the Commission. No formal action, discussion, deliberation, or comment will be made by the Commission. Each person providing public comment will be limited to 5 minutes. Anyone wishes to make a public citizen's comment? Guess not. Next item, consent agenda. All matters listed under the consent agenda are considered routine by the Commission and will be enacted by one motion. The items include preliminary and final plats where staff has found compliance with all minimum subdivision regulations. All items approved by consent are approved with any and all staff recommendations. There will not be separate discussions of these items. If any Commission desires to discuss an item on the consent agenda, will be moved to the regular agenda. Does any commissioner wish to remove an item?
I move to approve the consent agenda.
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All against? Motion passes. So, next item is public hearing. The Commission welcomes comment on the following items. Each person providing public comment will be limited to 5 minutes and will be asked to state his or her name, address, and address for the public record. Item 5A, ORD 0704. Presentation? The whole thing? Okay. To receive public comment and consider an application to rezone an approximately 11.84 acres from Agricultural Development Reserve A District to Planned Unit Development District with the base zoning designation of Urban Level 4 CL4 to allow for multifamily and townhomes by right. The property is situated in the Jacob Casno Survey number 9, abstract number 2753, generally located south of Geddes School Road, east of SH 130, north of Steve's Crossing, and west of Derby Day Avenue. Locally addressed 21101 FM 685 to be known as the Fairfield PUD.
Good evening, Chair and Commissioners. My name is Nathan Jones, current Planning Manager with City of Pflugerville Planning and Development Services Department. Item under consideration tonight is for the rezoning to the PUD zoning district for a project known as the Fairfield PUD. So a little bit of background on this project. It's approximately 12 acres located along 685. It was annexed in 2007, and at the time of annexation it was zoned to its current Ag Development Reserve zoning district. If this case looks familiar to you, to some of y'all it is. It came to Planning and Zoning Commission last year and to City Council. At the time it went through a review process through the city, through city staff. Planning and Zoning Commission recommended denial of the zoning request, and City Council denied the original zoning request. The PUD zoning is now back for reconsideration, and the requested PUD today has a base zone of the corridor CL4 zoning district. The site is bolded. It's the area in the bolded black outline just to the north. In red is zoned GB1, so that's our general business 1 zoning district. Existing uses there include the Gold's Gym, a few commercial uses along the frontage road. To the east of the subject property is the Steeds family single family residential neighborhood. Immediately to the south is zoned Ag Development Reserve And as you see here, there's a non-conforming business and a single-family house. And then to the west of the subject property is the the SH-130 corridor. So the comprehensive plan for this area calls out a future land use of mixed-use commercial. Mixed-use commercial is intended in the comprehensive plan to be more for high-intensity development, including retail and commercial. The comprehensive plan also identifies kind of a ideal mix of land uses in these future land use districts. And in this case, it calls for a roughly 75 to 25 split, 70 with the majority of the land uses being non-residential. And of those non-residential zoning district, or of those non-residential uses, retail is the preferred non-residential type. The subject property is also located within the Commons District. The Commons District is one of our neighborhood districts that were also adopted in the comprehensive plan. And the Commons District consists of several different types of existing land uses. There's single family throughout, existing single family neighborhoods throughout, and then along the corridor it's more intense development, so more intense retail and commercial uses. This current site, again, is on the western portion of the furthermost western portion of the Commons District. So the request under review tonight is again for the planned unit development zoning district with a base district of CL4. So here I'll run through some of the proposed development regulations. Also we'll have a few slides that show the concept plan and the layout, landscaping plan. Again, as y'all might recall from last week, we talked about planned unit developments. These are much more high level, much more detailed development review processes. So what you're reviewing now is the what we would as city staff review further future applications based on the UDC guidelines, and then will vary depending. So the first is the density. The first requirement is that it limits the maximum density to 40 dwelling units per acre, and that calculates roughly to 470 multifamily units and 10 townhouse units. There's a minimum of 17,000 square feet of walk-up commercial retail that's integrated vertical mixed use for the structures along the 130 corridor. Multifamily and townhouse would be allowed by right. It's proposing an enhanced buffer adjacent to the Steeds Crossing neighborhood. So everything immediately adjacent to Steeds Crossing has a higher buffer requirement than what would be under the base code. We'll get into that again in a little bit as well. It's also proposing structured parking. So here you see the location and orientation of the buffer. Everything to the far east of this tract again is the Steeds Crossing neighborhood. The proposed PUD includes a 125-foot buffer where the maximum height is set at 2 stories. Everything else outside of that hatched mark area has a maximum building height of 4 stories and a minimum height of 4 stories. Sorry. Here you see a little bit of their landscaping plan. The maximum impervious cover is proposed to be 80%. Again, 5 stories is a maximum building height. The structured garage is proposed to be six stories. There's a minimum density requirement of 10 dwelling units per acre, and again, that's to encourage the mix of uses so that it's not all commercial or not all residential. And it also is proposing enhanced landscaping along the Main Street entry point. So these roads throughout are private, are proposed to be private drives, not public right-of-way. And in so they're called, the proposal identifies it as the Main Street, but it is really a private drive. And along those private drives, PUD is also proposing additional landscaping, so additional trees and plantings. Here we have more detail of the concept plan. Again, starting on the eastern side, you see the 125-foot buffer. This is where the proposed open space and water detention is planned to be located, as well as the townhomes. On the far western side, along the 685 frontage. You see the mixed use, the 4-story mixed use, vertical mixed use buildings. And then in the center are the residential buildings, the 4 and 5-story residential buildings. And between those two is the structured parking. The next few slides will just be renderings of what the eventual structures might look like. This is the townhome exhibit. This is the rendering of the structures along 685. And then these are the interior structures located, the primarily residential structures located in the interior of the site. Here's a cross-section of what the proposed private drive would look like. Again, 4 stories on each side, pedestrian space, trees, and parallel parking spaces provided. This is a rendering of the landscaping plan. And again, here you can see trees lining the private drives, additional planters, gardens, and other open space. The PUD is proposing a streetscape of 15 feet versus the 25 feet required by code. This was included here to match an adjacent property just to the north to kind of create some of the more seamless development patterns between adjacent uses. And then sidewalks will be extended throughout the private drives. Here's the image of the circulation plan. Everything, the hatched blue lines is where the location of the sidewalks are proposed to be located. So you can see there's sidewalks provided throughout. With that, staff recommends approval of the planned unit development as presented. That concludes staff presentation. The applicant is here as well, and they have a short presentation. And then after public speaking, I'll come up and be available to answer any questions.
Hi, good evening. Oh,
Sorry.
no, you're good. I'm impressed by this. Y'all did a really great job very quickly for the record.
Good job,
It was
guys.
really impressive to watch. My name's Amanda Swore with Drenner Group this evening. Thank you for the opportunity to speak and present this project to you. As Nathan said at the beginning, this is a project that several of y'all saw last year. Following the denial of the original application by the Planning Commission or the Planning and Zoning Commission, we did take the application to City Council. It received a 4-3 vote. Unfortunately, it needed a supermajority. So that ultimately, even though we got an affirmative vote, it wasn't enough. And so really what our project team did was take a step back and say, all right, how do we want to move forward? Is it still a project that we want to work with? Is it a project that maybe it makes sense to go in and come in under CL4 or GB based on some of the original recommendations? And ultimately where we landed is that the PUD was still the right mechanism for this property. It really allowed us to create a hybrid that still respects a lot of the pieces that we heard really positive feedback on, and provide some additional flexibility that really lets us have a project that we're excited to present to you. So with that, I'm going to run through some of the changes that we've made, really some of the enhancements that we've made, and also address one of the bigger picture items that we talked about last time, which was traffic and transportation. And then happy to answer any questions. Let's see if I can figure this out. Do I just click? Let's use the computer, that works better. So as we went through the public hearing process last time, both from a boards and commissions standpoint, city council, and also conversations with interested parties, one of the pieces that we heard was that there was a need to increase the amount of mixed use. So if we were going to put residential on the property, that it really made sense to add additional commercial. Originally, the project had a minimum of 10,000 square feet of commercial. The new PUD requires a minimum of 17,000 square feet of commercial. When I pull up the plan, I'll show you where that is located. In our conversations with staff, that commercial does have to be constructed before we can get final COs on our residential, meaning there is a requirement within the PUD that this is a true mixed-use project, not just a standard multifamily project, which you could do if we were to have sought the CL4 zoning designation. There is also a requirement that this be built in to accommodate more than one user. So a minimum of 2, it can be split up into more than that. One of the other things that was talked about a lot at this meeting was the impervious cover on the property. So our original proposal contemplated 85% impervious cover. The impervious cover for the GB zoning district is 80%. Under CL4, it's either 60 or 80, depending on use, whether you're commercial or residential. There isn't one for mixed use. So what we did is really work to create additional open space, and we were able to reduce our requested impervious cover from 85% to 80%. One of the other things that was really a topic of conversation is if we're asking for additional density, that we really needed to look at how we could incorporate some of the additional parking that's part of CL4. So I'll be able to show it a little bit better on the plan, but really what we've done is create a hybrid. So we are structurally parking the majority of the multifamily portion of the property. For retail to survive, you have to have parking, and you have to have visible parking that people can get to and use. So we really worked with staff to create a hybrid that allows for us to structurally park and wrap the back portion of the property, and then the front portion of the property that is along 685 still does maintain the surface parking with a lot of that hidden, but if you don't have surface parking that is visible and accessible, retail will not survive. And so we didn't want to just create retail for it to sit vacant for the longevity of the project. We did increase the open space. We also had a lot of conversations about connectivity. So because of our access along 685, we only do have the one TxDOT access point, but we heard a lot, really more from council than at this commission, on if we have that access to the north that connects behind the car wash, et cetera, let's make that viable, not only for this project, but for future projects. So we rearranged the entire property to, instead of it being kind of an S and just a drive, it is now a thoroughfare that will continue to access all, for anyone that develops to the south of us in the future, they will be able to use it, and anyone on our property can go to the north. And then we also realigned 685 based on some comments that we received. Some of the positive feedback that we received the first time that we went through the PUD process, we wanted to make sure that we maintained. So if you remember, and as staff mentioned, we did provide, we have residents that live to the east of us. They are there, and we wanted to make sure that anything that develops in the future respects them. So there is the 125-foot setback within that. The only structures that are allowed are those two-story townhomes. So a two-story townhome to a two-story single-family house, with much larger than what you and I probably have in our backyards for the residents that are behind us. And then the transition between the heights going forward, really to respect that area. And then even within that, the 65-foot buffer, increasing the number of residential amenities, the additional screening, the northern connection, again, we realigned that, internal sidewalks, and then the maximum height multifamily, excuse me, of the multifamily structures. Staff really hit most of these, so I'll jump through it in an interest of time, but it is a true mixed-use project. It does have the 5-story maximum, the 6-story for the parking garage. Parking garage floor plates are different, and so to be able to make that work, that is what that modification is for. And then the stormwater facilities on site, I think that's a really important thing. Today, this property sheet flows when it rains. The rain rolls straight into the neighborhoods to the east. This property will provide on-site detention and water quality, meaning the water that comes in, we will have to detain it and then slowly filter it out so that it will not sheet flow and flood the houses that it currently does today. Oh, I feel like I'm talking fast, but I wanted to make sure, so I talked through all that. Can you see my cursor if I move it? Okay, yes. Awesome. So I want to just kind of do a quick layout on how this sits and what has changed on here. So if you start on the right side of the screen or along the eastern side of the property, this is a landscape buffer that will exist between that will be installed between the existing single family and the proposed project. This area right here where the cursor is proposed open space, and these kind of dark green dotted areas are where the detention goes. So this property has a lot of fall. It falls from 685 to the east back towards his existing neighborhood, which is why the water today runs off of the property into the existing neighborhood. That's where detention has to go for it to actually function and make sense. Nobody wants to look at an ugly detention pond. So we do have the requirements that this detention area is green and that it is landscaped. It is not a concrete detention pond like you would see in a shopping center that has chain link fences around it to make sure that everybody stays out of it. It is intended to be an amenity to the project. The line where this blue cursor is, this is where the townhomes are, again, situated to provide that buffer area. So within that 125 feet, what you will notice about the townhomes is that the garages are on the left or on the west side, so that you do not have cars that are driving around this, headlights going into the neighbors. Everything has been designed so that the townhomes load internal to the multifamily part of the project. So essentially you have backyard to backyard, townhome backyards to backyards of the existing residences. The larger footprint of this building is the redesign of the project to accommodate the structured, or the structured parking. If you saw this project the first time, this was split into two buildings with a road that went down the middle of it, with structure or surface parking on either side. What this project has done is clustered the parking into the middle. So this is a true, wrapped project. This is a structured parking garage. This is one where if I live on the third floor, I can drive my car to the third floor. I take my groceries out. I can walk into my third floor, and I don't have to go up and down a whole bunch of stairs. It is designated to be that type of project. You'll also notice that it is screened from the directions that any headlights would have any impact to neighborhoods. So when you come in to the project, it is fully screened by existing units. It also allowed us to reevaluate the way that the open space sits on the property. So you have the internal courtyard on the south side of this that has the pool, etc. This is really where the majority of the additional open space was captured. And then as you continue to the west, you'll see the additional open space on the south of this building and on this one. So these two buildings where my cursor is today, those are also multifamily structures. This one that sits long ways along 685, the entire ground floor of this property is where the commercial is. So the entire frontage of this building is where the 17,000 square feet of retail is required. What you'll also notice that your staff did a really great job on pushing for, frankly, is that this area is designed and required to be programmed. So not only is it commercial space, it's commercial space with a purpose. So we don't know what's going to be there. It all depends on the market. We intend to put grease traps in there so that it can be a restaurant. Outdoor seating, if it's something else, it's an area that is programmable and usable by not only the residents of this project, but the residents of the city. The other thing I would just point out is this drive, when we originally came forward, it was more of just an access drive. So this road kind of curved and came back here and stubbed out. What we were really encouraged to do by the city council at that meeting is make this connect. If we're going to have safer ingress and egress, make this not only for your residents, but for the residents of the city of Pflugerville, because of the commercial spaces to the north that already have that area there. I think the staff did a great job of hitting the landscaping and the sidewalks and all that, so I won't belittle these points. I'll probably jump through a few of these. This just shows how it lays out. One of the key things when we very first met with the neighbors at the beginning of this process a year and a half ago, everyone says, how close are you going to be to my house? When this Gold's Gym went in, it is as absolutely close as you can get to the residents. This is what could happen under a general business designation. You could build with your access drive behind it and put a commercial space right up next to the neighbors under those types of regulations. What you'll notice is our first buildings are significantly further back, and they're two-story residential structures. You don't get to over, I call it 2/3, you might call it 3/4 of the way back on the Gold's Gym building before you would see any type of structure, and you also have the screening of the townhomes in that area. This also shows you really well the road on how it would connect to the existing roadway to the north, and then to the south as properties redevelop that direction. Did you talk about open space? Open space, we did get permission from the Parks and Recreation Board to provide a fee in lieu. That being said, we are still providing a whole lot of on-site open space. It's not like we're not providing amenities, but there will be a fee of over $500,000. Staff really talked through the superiority items with the setbacks, the dwelling units per acre, all of those items. I'm happy to talk to them more, but in the interest of time, we'll kind of go through these. But I will say that we have prohibited some of the uses that you would not otherwise want to see on the site. Traffic, this is the piece that I know that everyone wants to talk about, which is where I was getting to. So TIA has been completed. Under City of Pflugerville, TIA is not reviewed until you're at the site plan stage. So it is done. We have done our studies. It is in the city's hands, but it won't be reviewed. If hopefully when, until a zoning were to be approved and an actual project were to move forward. What we definitely learned, though, is that there still needs to be a conversation about traffic. And so we had some transportation engineers provide us some numbers. This property has been up for sale, will be up for sale. This property will develop. It will not stay agricultural. It is a matter of, does the property develop with, I think the staff presented to y'all last time, is it kind of GB makes sense or CL4? Those are the two categories that would really make sense in this area. Under a GB, you would likely get some type of shopping center use. Under a CL4 straight zoning, to make the site work with the topography, you would have someone that builds structure parking that could build up to 60 units an acre. What we are proposing is that in between. We are providing the structured parking. We are not hitting the 60 units per acre. We are hitting that 40 units per acre, where 20 is allowed by right, so only 50% of that bonus, but still providing a substantial amount of structured parking. And so really, I think the numbers tell you a lot about, traffic is real. Traffic exists here. I drive by it all the time. You all drive by it all the time. Anybody who says that that's not a real thing is not real, right? But what I wanted to point out is the difference in the trips per day. So what's on the bottom line of this is our Fairfield Crossing PUD. It is our proposed commercial and retail spaces. And what you see above that are if you had, a retail center, if you had a, superstore, and then the high density multifamily with structured parking is if someone were to build this under standard CL4 with the full 60 units per acre or something along those lines. What you'll notice is that our trips per day are substantially, exponentially, I think is probably even a fair word, lower than what you could end up on this property with the GB use. For a standard trips per day, it's $29.20 for ours. If you had a retail center or even a retail superstore, you're over 7,500 trips per day. One of the big things that we heard when we came out of council is that everybody needs to talk. We are in a very unique part of the city where you have TxDOT, you have Williamson County, you have the city of Pflugerville, you have the city of Hutto, and they all have roads, and they are all doing different improvements. We were very fortunate to get to have a meeting with all of those entities. We knew that we had to make sure that everyone was talking before we even thought about coming back with a new project on this, because we knew it was going to be the questions. They were very generous with their time, and they spent probably an hour with us. There were city representatives on, and we were able to just kind of try to understand what everyone was contemplating from an improvement standpoint, because some people have improvements that are under construction today and are supposed to open, in days, weeks. There's others that are decades in the future. One of the important things that I do think is, that I didn't mention that I want to on this is the beginning of a process, right? So we are in zoning. Once we zone, we still have to do site development permits and building permits and build it. There are not going to be residents on the ground tomorrow, right? This is a several-year process, and we have a lot of roadway projects that are currently planned, under construction, and planned for in the future. So the key topics that really came out of that meeting, and I can let others that are far more experts than me if there are specific questions, was really the County Road 138 Southeast Loop improvements, the short-term ones that are in process, and then the longer-term ones that are several years down the road, the flyovers, and then it was a really interesting meeting for me when at one point in time they said, why haven't we had this meeting before, right? Even the internal departments, we asked for it and they met with us, probably within a month, and that's a lot of people to coordinate. When you're talking about how many are interested in what's going on here. They got as in detailed as, excuse me, I don't know about y'all, but the oak is real this year. They got into as much detail as the sidewalk improvements that are improved or that are contemplated on 138, how pedestrians are going to get across the street to, right turning lane movements on 130. There was a lot of conversation. I think ultimately they know what the short-term pieces are. They also know that they needed to continue to coordinate. They mentioned that they would continue to have these types of conversations, that we could continue to get information. But right now, these are the kind of general improvements that they talked about and the improvements that they know about. They also did we asked them to kind of just take a look at our numbers and make sure that we weren't way off on where we were. And they did generally agree that the residential, a residential project does have a fewer trips per day than a commercial project. So, okay. Thank you for the time. I think it's important. We did not come back lightly. It is, I can tell you, I've been doing this for a really long time, and this is probably the second project that I've ever, come back to a commission on after going through that. My clients, your staff, took a tremendous amount of time working with us to come up to you all with a project that we're really proud about. So I'm happy to answer any questions, and again, thank you for the time to walk through the project.
Thank you.
I have a quick question. What's the distance from the east edge of the multifamily and structured parking to the east edge of the property, approximately, do you know?
Let me make sure I understand your question. From the east edge of the multifamily to the east edge of the property?
Yes.
So it's about 120, it's 125, right? Yeah, 125 feet.
Okay.
I just wanted to say thank you for anticipating the questions about traffic and getting all of those entities together, because as I was looking at this and looking at, we all know that the traffic concerns there are valid and it's a snarl. Did you happen to, in the meetings with those 4 entities, hear anything about it? And this might be a better question for staff, but a timeline on the Row Lane flyover? Does anybody have that yet?
Nathan Jones, planning manager again. So there are, as Amanda mentioned, there are several different jurisdictions that have several different projects at play here. And actually one of the items on the agenda tonight is to talk about the CIP project. So we have the SH 130 corridor plan. The intent of that plan, again, we'll go into much more detail later on tonight, but the intent of that plan is to identify projects, identify needs, and then make proposals for how those mitigations will be approved. In terms of your flyover project, I know that Williamson County is the lead on that, and if I recall, Jeremy, you might have to help me out on this one, but
You were asking about Row Lane. So Row Lane is just south of this particular project, and that's a design that they're looking at, but there's not a planned time frame for the implementation at this point.
So they're in the design phase?
It is in design phase?
Yeah,
Is
we said the same
the
thing.
question, okay.
Is it in design phase?
It's in like a more of a study phase.
Oh, so not
It's
even
study.
design
Look,
yet?
looking at what's the best location on the landing side, how do we move that project through?
Because I'm
It's at the
guessing
very early
alleviating
phase.
because a lot of the traffic is the northbound traffic on 130 Access Road, and if they can get over on Row instead of turning around at 138, that's gonna have a huge impact.
It could, yes.
So, and that was, I believe it's listed as a high priority project for Pflugerville, but it's not actually our project, is that
It sounds
right?
like it's
on our CIP
Wilco.
list? Again, I don't want to jump ahead to the later conversation, but at least the last version of the report that I saw, it was a high priority for us. Yeah.
Right.
Okay. Thanks.
So public hearing.
Ask any questions? At this time, I open up for public discussion. Is there anyone wishing to comment on this project? I have one, Casey Lyra. I saw a hand raised in the back. If you, okay.
Sorry, I was standing awkwardly back there looking at y'all. I had back surgery on Wednesday. So my HOA president had to drive me down here. First of all, I want to say thank y'all so much for taking the time. If y'all don't remember me, I was here last Planning and Zoning Committee. I just had an 8-year-old attached to my hip. Y'all might have heard her snoring. And I want to thank the developers as well. They have been meeting with us, been hearing our concerns. And again, for the city, we are not Steeds Crossing. The neighborhood is Ridge at Steeds Crossing. Same thing as I said last time, they have a pool, I don't. And I'm not paying their HOA fees for their pool. So we're two actually separate neighborhoods. And I'd kind of like to address both this development and then the second development that's going to be coming up, kind of an all-in-one. So I want to thank y'all for this opportunity to speak on behalf of our neighborhoods in the 685-138 area. I would like to start off by saying that Pflugerville is growing, and development, that's obviously a given. No one's going to argue that. But I am here just to kind of argue a tad bit that development without a solid infrastructure is reckless, both, well, literally. I can barely get out now. I'm sure that you've already know that since 2010, Pflugerville's population has grown for about 30%, and Hutto's has increased over 50%. And again, that's since 2010. Much of the growth has occurred north and northeast of 130 and has an exponential impact on the intersection of 685, 138, and also Kelly Lane and 685. In spite of tens of thousands of additional cars, these intersections had not have had any significant changes since 2008. So in the larger picture, we are looking at both the Kelly Lane intersection as well as the 138, 685, because there's no way to exit off of 130 unless you're right at Gaddis, and then it's a Hail Mary to get across three rows of traffic to the right. So have fun with that one. I do every day. Pflugerville Police Department has provided me with 2 full pages of responses at 685 and Steve's Crossing intersection within the last 5 years. I also have 3 pages from the Williamson County Sheriff's Department with incidents in the last 5 years on 138 in the Derby Day Secretariat area. If y'all would like a copy of those, I do have them for y'all. I printed 5 extra copies if anybody wanted to see those, but I did have to put in a public information request for those items there. However, at the same time, the road infrastructure has not kept up with the pace of the additional growth of the cities. The Planning and Zoning Commission, I would think that planning is as important to the community sorry, I wrote this morning. It was so great in my head. And is equal as important to our community's needs and successes as zoning. I would like to ask what questions you as commissioners are asking as far as planning for the area. We are looking at adding 3 complexes to 685, not only by Ridge at Steve's Crossing, but Steve's Crossing as well, which you will hear from some of the residents next on that one. Just really in terms of the road, I've seen the sidewalk. The shopping center north of that does not have a sidewalk by 130 or 685, so I don't know where that would connect. But there are very, very lacking sidewalks in that area. They have fixed the road through traffic. I think that that's great. Has a current comprehensive study been done to show the impact on the intersection at 685 and 138 if these 3 complexes do go in with the already going up gas station, medical office, and public storage facility, which are currently being built on 138? Has that been taken into consideration as well? Since the last traffic study previously presented is now out of date and irrelevant, given that we are past the pandemic and growth has continued. More people are being required to go back to work, and students are required to be back in the classroom. The schools, when the study was done, was still allowing remote classes. This year they are not. So the end of school year of 2022, people are going back to work and students are going back into their classes. Another thing to consider is the current capacity of Pflugerville ISD school districts. Our district is now a recapture district and as such loses millions in funding. Further, I have such good words, lacking saying them. Y'all know what I'm trying to say here. Development only exacerbates that issue. The school community just went through a threat of schools closing on the southwest side that required realigning attendance areas in the north and northeast. Ultimately, who pays for the new schools that will need to be built? And who pays for the required infrastructure for that increased traffic? I also noticed, I'm kind of going to go off. So, okay.
Are there any other comments? I have a motion to close public hearing.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All against? So, commissioners, you have any questions or?
Who owns the property now? Is it currently still ag?
It's currently zoned ag, yes.
And who owns it?
The representative.
The PUD, y'all do?
No, we're part of the developer, but it's owned by a private individual.
Okay.
Um,
And they're working with you?
Yes.
Okay.
Correct.
I mean, I am sympathetic to the traffic stuff. I used to work in downtown Austin and live in Pflugerville. 15 minutes of my commute in downtown Austin was 3 city blocks. But we also have to balance affordability. People are coming. And I think that this is a really thoughtful design. I don't imagine that we would have better. And I am really glad that the voters voted in favor of the 2020 transportation bond to improve and expand roadways. I know the previous transportation bond failed. So I think we are working toward addressing the traffic issues.
I have maybe just to echo you, I do appreciate it. It does seem like there's been a lot of work to bring a plan that is much more in line with the ideas for that area, given all of the constraints of perhaps some wonky drainage, et cetera. So I do appreciate the level of work there. I have a couple of, I'll say, non-traffic related questions, if you don't mind, real quick. I did want to ask about the detention area. You mentioned that it would cover basically essentially the full length of the east side of the property, and you had mentioned that it was not actually going to be a fenced-in area. So does that imply that it's going to be like less than 3 feet? I think that's maybe what the code is in terms of not needing protection around it.
So if it's not, so again, to back up a little bit and explain what the PUD process will include, it'll include its own set of development regulations, which include regulations related to screening and landscaping. The concept plan that y'all saw shows the general location, and it'll show the type of landscaping that is proposed. But if the zoning is approved, it still has to go through our site development process, at which point their engineers will run some calculations and try to determine how big and deep the detention needs to be. Our engineers with the city will review that, and we'll go back and forth until all of the comments have been addressed. And so anything, if it's not a regulation that is explicitly detailed in the PUD, it would defer back to base code. So meaning that we would just use the base UDC requirements to review.
Can I address that a little bit also?
Yeah.
So our PUD actually does have some requirements about the detention area. Because we have the space in it, 100% correct. We'll have to finalize all the details at site development permit. But there are requirements that if there are walls, if it's not earth and berm, that those walls have like stone. Why is my brain not working on the word I'm looking for?
Stone face.
Yeah, like stone facing. So it's not just like a concrete wall. It's pretty, that there's landscaping within it, that there's green bottoms, not concrete bottoms, that type of stuff. So there are some of those requirements. The exact volumetrics are in there, and then we were able to kind of space it so that we know that there can be some open space, programmable open space in between that.
Got it. Okay. Yeah, okay. Thank you.
I've got a question on impervious, and I'm not even smart enough to make an intelligent question, so just bear with me. I know that parking is necessary, and I know that asphalt gives off a lot of heat, but I also know that there are ways to do pervious parking. Do you know what I'm talking about with the gravel and the grates and all that kind of stuff? Is that appreciably more expensive to install and maintain, and that's why we don't see it?
Sure. And
There's a couple of pieces to that. So this is Zach Johnson with Fairfield. I'll let him kind of address some of those pieces, and then I'll
Thank
ad-lib
you.
with it.
I won't be able to speak nearly as fast as Amanda. So, In terms of impervious coverage, impervious parking, yes, is the short answer. In order to do pervious parking, you're basically having to do kind of like almost like a concrete base and then put rock gravel over it and then drain that out. And we also find there's a lot of R&M because that stuff ends up getting kind of dispersed throughout over time. So we wouldn't necessarily be looking at doing pervious parking along that area. We would also probably not be looking at doing asphalt. We'd be looking at concrete parking, so concrete or a concrete surface for our parking areas. So that's a little bit different in terms of kind of the environmental impact from it. But I think appreciably the bigger step in this case was before we were 70% surface parked with 30% tuck under and garage parking along the project. With this, we're north of 50% all structured parking in a space, and it's likely going to be a little bit more than that as well. And so we're trying to contain more of that parking, and that's what's allowed us to open up more green space and more hardscape areas and other things amenities-wise for the project.
How big are your trees going to be?
How big, I mean, per
Yeah,
caliber?
we need lots of shade.
They'll be per code. I mean, we'll follow the landscape code on all of that. And so I think we'll meet the code on all the landscape requirements.
It's always in our benefit to get as big a trees as we can.
Yeah, actually, the first time this came around, that was kind of one of my main concerns was the amount of impervious cover. And, going to the structured parking, I think addresses that as much as anything else, because you're taking the parking spot from the ground and you're putting it, up in the air. So you free up more of that space. I mean, so the total amount of pervious cover has increased in the new plan versus the old one?
I'm sorry. So the original request was for 85% impervious cover. We've reduced that to a maximum of 80%, which is consistent with the surrounding zoning.
Okay, yeah.
I think this being, sorry, did you say?
Yeah, no, yeah.
I think one of the reasons I'm glad that this is coming through as a PUD as well is that future changes to those plans would have to come back. And I think it's probably important for our citizens here and I think I counted 14 letters that we got on this that were provided to us from staff, that any future changes to things like cover, screening, streets would have to come back and be reapproved through the PUD process again. As opposed to leaving it a general zoning, right, where you could sell the property again, right, and have a different plan altogether.
I agree.
And to give some context, so I don't have my notes on me, but the biggest objection back in July that I recall was the traffic. And it was something like 650 or so, was it residents or people, that occupants in the space, and so that was a huge objection. And then obviously the traffic ingress egress to the north side, and then connectivity to the south property, which is undeveloped now. Those were major objections to some of the previous members of this committee at the time. And so the fact that you guys solved those really speaks a lot to your attempt to relieve some of that pressure.
Is that, I'm not sure how to phrase this in a purely objective way, but is that northbound connection fairly viable? I'm not familiar with the businesses that are in that development
We
directly
actually
north.
have an easement associated with the property, so it is viable. It's not
Got
just,
it, okay.
it's not potential, it is,
Yeah,
that
And
access.
it does exist today.
Okay.
So that concrete street has
Got
been
it.
poured to the site. And so
Okay.
once we develop, it'll line up and be existing.
got it. Okay, so that'll be available for your residents of the development to use.
On day one.
Yeah, got it.
And is any of this area going to be gated, or is it all going to be?
It's
free
all
access?
gonna be open, so free for traffic. That was really a big push from council, was not just you, but in the future, that way it actually becomes a functioning access path.
Yeah, I mean, seeing all the concerns about traffic and what we heard last time, I would kind of almost worry that having the free access there parallel to this road that's backed up all the time, that, I mean.
People are
I
gonna
don't
cut
know.
through.
Yeah, they're gonna cut through, and then that's gonna be people going right through the same area, I mean.
But it's gonna have a lot of trees and parking lots, so hopefully they won't be able to go quickly, or we can just
Yeah.
get some ticket money out of it.
Yeah.
I think the only other thing I wanted to bring up, because we got all these emails from citizens as well, I did want to bring up, this is really for staff, several of these citizens had some ideas on ways to help calm traffic in some of the surrounding neighborhoods. We don't necessarily need to like read those into the record or anything, but I do want to make sure we follow up and get those to the right staff department,
I
city
think we should
departments.
definitely follow them up when we go over the capital improvement plan later.
Yeah, that's a great point as well. I like that.
Yeah.
Great. Cool. So yeah, just want to make sure that we get those somewhere and get them in the right people's hands to take a look at.
Thank you.
Is the other item directly adjacent to this, ORD 0706? Oh, okay.
It's over by Target.
So does any commissioner care to make a motion?
Make a motion to approve the PUD request.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Unanimous?
Thank you for the time.
Thank you for the work.
Move on to item 5B, ORD 0706, to receive public comment and consider an application to rezone 6 lots at the corners of Steeves Crossing and SH 130, consisting of approximately 8.279 acre tract of land generally located both north and south of Steeves Crossing as it intersects with SH 130 and FM 685. From Agriculture Development Reserve A to Corridor District 3 and Corridor District 4, CL3 and CL4, to be known as Steeves Crossing rezoning 2023-1-RAZ.
Good evening, Commissioners. I'm Sammy Fleischman. I'm a planner with the City of Pflugerville Planning and Development Services. And I'll be going over the rezoning of a mixed-use project at Steeves Crossing. So for a little background, the subject tract is composed of 6 lots, and it's along Steeves Crossing and FM 685 and State Highway 130. In total, the tracts are 8.279 acres. The lots were platted in 1989 and then annexed into the City of Pflugerville in 2007 and subsequently zoned Agriculture and Development Reserve. These tracts have never or have not been or have not had a previous proposal on them, so this is the first time they're coming to P&Z. For the adjacent zoning and land uses, to the north of the subject tract is a single-family rural residence. To the east is Steeves Crossing suburb. To the south, in the southwest corner is utilities, and then beneath the tract is U-Haul, and to the west is State Highway 130. For Aspire Pflugerville 2040 plan, it is suggested or called out as mixed-use commercial, and that includes high-intensity mixed use, high-density residential development, and then special shopping, dining and entertainment. The residential is suggested to be mid to high rise and compact building structure and highly walkable urban form. The Aspire Comprehensive Plan also calls out, just like in the previous, that it's 75% non-residential and 25% residential, with the majority being retail. This tract is also in the Commons District, and the district is showing some shifts. So previously older housing, and now it's shifting more towards commercial and intense residential land uses. And there are intentions, and it has been recognized, the need to increase connectivity. The property is currently zoned Agriculture and Development Reserve, and the proposal is Suburban Corridor Level 3, which is just over 4.5 acres, and that's going to be on the eastern side, neighboring Steeves Crossing, and then CL4, Urban Level CL4, for 3.74 acres, abutting Highway 130. The Suburban Corridor District, CL3, is intended to have lower density in suburban development, mostly residential uses and single-family homes, and limited commercial uses, and emphasizing walkable neighborhoods as well. So Suburban Corridor 3 is an ideal zoning, or is a zoning that works ideally for this tract of land because it transitions seamlessly from single-family suburban to intense residential and commercial. The Urban Corridor District 4, which is along 685, is defined to have a vibrant and walkable neighborhoods, increased residential densities, and a variety of housing types, commercial retail services, and is supposed to be supportive of surrounding neighborhoods and employment centers. So CL4 works well in this location along SH 130, and it allows for vertical mixed use and more intense development neighboring the primary thoroughfare. These are images of the existing conditions. The top two images are standing on FM 685 facing east, and the one on the right is looking north, and on the left looking south. And then the two lower images are on Steeds Crossing facing north and south. The proposed zoning aligns with the comprehensive plan and is cohesive with surrounding land uses, and staff recommends approval. This concludes staff presentation, and we do have our applicant here as well.
Hi, my name is Stu Oldham. I'm an architect with SKB Architecture. I've been working and living in Austin area for 30 years. I'm representing the owner of this project. We have, I won't go into, she's explained it really well, Samantha, has generally what we're doing. We're looking for a zone change, and that's really all we're here for. We do intend to comply with the Aspire plan. We're trying to do everything that we've been asked to do, okay? We've had discussions with the neighborhood, with people in the neighborhood and the groups since at least February. We started working on that in December, trying to get a hold of the right people and that sort of thing. So we've been talking regularly, and you'll probably hear from a couple of them here. We do intend to assist the neighborhood in some of the things they care about. They've given us lists of things they're concerned about, and some of these things are off-site, okay? Like we you've heard already tonight, lots of concern about problems with traffic that are something we can't really help with. That's something the cities and the counties just have to do with. But things like calming traffic in the neighborhood, we're here to, we want to help. We are willing to we're willing to help do a traffic study, for instance, for the neighborhood. We're in favor of the various things that they want to do for traffic calming. We're even willing to buy a couple of radar monitors, for instance. That's something they've asked about. We do expect to provide turn lanes into and out of the project, and we have talked to TxDOT about an additional access to make sure there's a right in and right out for people coming out. We absolutely intend to make connected walkways and things between the neighborhood and us, because that's what they would want. We're contemplating a mixed-use project with retail, commercial, and residential. And there will be, like say, sidewalks connecting. That's the basic thing. We're just looking for the zoning, and we know we're going to be going back through council, and we have to go to site plan review, and many of these things will be worked out at that time as well. So if we have any questions, I'm here. Excuse me? Oh.
Yeah, okay.
There we go.
So these are two of your.
Okay, sure. This just shows the location, which you can see, and we're up against the neighborhood on the east side, and there's going to be a requirement in the CL3 for a buffer, a significant buffer. We would intend to create berms and fences and trees and public walkways and that sort of thing. That has been expressed, and of course we want to do it.
You've heard about our connectivity and
Yeah.
Okay.
We're all about that. I mean, that's absolutely what we intend to do, and we would have done it anyway.
So there's a plan to put an additional access point at the north edge?
Yeah,
of
at the
property?
north end of the CL4 along the highway, we have intended, well, here we go. It's not a plan, but at the north end of Area 1 there, we have talked to TxDOT about an access point there. And they've given us preliminary, not official, non-binding, but we've had a meeting with them and they're like, yeah, we support that with a turn lane. And we would expect to do that at Steed's Crossing as well, whether they, require it or not.
Would that possibly also include an extra lane to get out of Steed's Crossing easier?
Yeah,
It's one of the most
that's our
common things,
intention.
right?
Because the turn lane that TxDOT would like to see is as long as they can make it. They would want it to go right up to the crossing, and we're like, well, just continue it right on,
Right.
okay? And I've been there now and done the traffic and driven through there, and I get it, it would definitely be a good idea to slow things down a little bit on on a street that would make it worthwhile for people to go in a different direction. And I think that's not hard without getting, I'm not gonna state it as fact, but it's close enough that a little bit of traffic calming would make all the difference in the world in terms of the internal neighborhood circulation.
Do you already have a concept drawn, or do you already have a builder
We've-
identified?
We have a design that we've shown the neighbors, okay, so they're not gonna be surprised. But we didn't wanna, we're not trying to get site plan approval here, and we don't wanna have something up there that it's like, well, we don't like that, or something, so it'll be designed to meet the requirements of the zoning and the intent. Everything we're talking about is what the city's looking for as we understand it.
Clarification on what y'all were just talking about with the turn lane and you were saying another way out of Steed's Crossing that would go along the edge. So are we talking about westbound along the north edge?
We're talking about, for instance, if we have a significant project on Area 1, that's where the largest building would be, you could get in and out of that building without even going anywhere else.
I think you can use the mouse because we don't see your fingers.
Sorry, here. Let's just, is this the mouse I want to do? There we go. Okay, right there, okay? This area, this section would have a significant amount of people in it. And all of them, the way they're parked and everything, could go in and out right there without even getting on Steed's. Of course, the concern of the neighborhood is that somebody come from Hutto would cut through the neighborhood to get to it, and so that's the biggest issue that we've heard.
With these four
And I
areas,
tried it, and it's a minute or less difference that, but some things in the road would help.
would all these four areas be separately fenced or blocked off, or would it all just be kind of?
It's one big
contiguous?
development.
Yeah.
Right, there'd be kind of a street between Area 1 and Area 3, so for instance, with street parking, and the Area 3 would be, lower density, like it says, attached, single family, not that much to it, there's more green than there is buildings.
And maybe you already mentioned it, what's the reason for asking for CL3 on one side and CL4 on the other?
For the very thing that the plan talks about, we want to make a good transition to the neighborhood. We don't think that anybody's going to be okay with us putting a big building right next to their house.
Okay.
So these are residential scale buildings that are they're 40 feet away minimum. That's how big the buffer is that we have in mind.
So CL4 wouldn't be appropriate to go straight up to the neighborhood, but
We
CL3
don't
wouldn't
think
be
so,
dense enough to get the number of
Right.
units or whatever else you want to do on the
Right,
roadside.
right.
Okay.
And staff, Steed's is city jurisdiction, but if, for example, this plan comes back, for example, a right turn lane out of Steed's, that's still city plus TxDOT, right? Ultimately, that you'd need in order to do something like
Right.
that, right? Mr.
Yeah,
Graham?
that's why I want to at least hear from TxDOT that they're not against it.
That's a start.
Yeah.
Sure, okay.
So what I'm hearing, correct me if I'm wrong, so we're talking about the zoning today, if approved, and if approved by city council, you'll come back with a site plan at some point in the future, and we can go
Yeah.
hog wild with where your stub should be.
Okay.
So is there anyone here wish to speak on this particular item? I have some here. First one, Casey Lyra,
Is that the same lady?
same place.
I'll skip.
Okay.
Somebody else's turn.
Sorry, I didn't sign the card because I was just going to leave that for Casey to do. I'm Cheryl Ribbage. I'm the HOA president for the Ridget Steeds Crossing. And since we are joined together at the hip, we've been discussing this. Thanks, Jerry. I'll get it to you. We've been discussing this a lot in our neighborhoods, and we share a through street, and that is Derby Day. And it's awful. So I know that the first project was approved, and that's the one right behind us. But I would like to, the opportunity, just if there's anything that we can do, anybody that we need to talk to about improving the conditions in that area. It's actually impossible to get anywhere, anybody that's driven that, we all know. But the safety on Derby Day is a huge thing, and we've talked to Mayor Gonzalez a couple of times. He's come to our meetings about speed bumps of some sort. And I know those aren't allowed in the city of Pflugerville, but any kind of, even a low level, low profile, any kind of anything going down Derby Day would definitely help. Both of these projects, even though they're beautiful, it's the housing, it's the residents that are the issue, not the businesses, because they're going to have no choice. But when they leave, that 685 only goes one way. They have to come around. If they go shopping to the north, they will have to come around through our neighborhood. So anything that we can do, if anybody has any recommendations, if we can get a meeting with anybody, we would sure appreciate that, because it's been a real struggle. And that actually, I've been to every meeting for the South Loop. The only thing that's going to be done by this summer is they'll give us our turn lane back, and they will have the right-hand lane that will be going from Hutto coming up. It will be going, there will be a dedicated lane. That's all that's going to be done by the summer. That's all the help we will get, but that will not help either one of these new developments. Those folks will still have to come through our neighborhood to get home, because they're sure not going to go towards Kelly Lane. As I stated in my email to y'all, nobody wants to go towards Kelly Lane at peak times at all. So anything that y'all can recommend to the city or us, or any meetings we can get, would be truly appreciated. Because when these projects go in, it's just all that many more people that's on the streets. And we don't know what else to do. People on Derby Day can't even back out because of the amount of, and they're speeding, the amount of people going through there. And the commons come through both of our neighborhoods as well. I don't know. Thanks for listening. Appreciate it.
Alice Rose Dewar?
Thank you. So I live in Steeds Crossing HOA. The ridge is next to Steeds Crossing. It's unfortunate that people lump them together because they are, while next to each other, they are different. And the fact that Steeds Crossing has 240 homes. The main road is Steeds Crossing and about 2 blocks of Derby Day. Unfortunately, the ridge bears the brunt of the traffic on Derby Day, especially anyone coming from the northern direction, even from the HEB, that's considered Hutto, but is right on Round Rock, Pflugerville. Anyone coming from that store, whether they live in the Ridge, Steeds Crossing, the Commons, or some of the Blackhawk developments, they all take 138, they make a right-hand turn onto Derby Day, and they make a left onto Steeds Crossing, which I call Steeds Racetrack, because the Pflugerville PD has already told us they don't patrol that section, and we already know that the average speed is 40 or higher. So I happen to live on that portion. Most of the homes in Steeds Crossing actually do not face Steeds, the road Steeds Crossing. There are only 2 blocks that face out into Steeds Crossing. What we did though is we did learn from the Row Loop project, where where all of you told us that feelings were to be put aside and that traffic was not something that was your concern at the time. Only 2 of you were nice enough to take that into account. So we've learned, and we went directly to the owner of the property, Mr. Michael Roberts, and then we also spoke to Mr. Stuart Alderman, and we gave him a list of what we're looking for. We are realistic in that this development will probably go through because, well, Pflugerville says they need more residents, but we also know it's looking for more money. So with that, we thought, well, let's play the game as well. And we gave them a detailed list of what we would like, and knowing that it will need to be worked on as the development progresses, and also things such as the radar monitors. I actually have copies if anybody would want it, but the radar monitors, it has basically the speed at the top, and then it tells you what you're going. Those are allowed by Pflugerville, but not paid for by Pflugerville. We are a working, barely middle-class neighborhood. We don't have that money, so we brazenly asked if they would pay for them and the installation. And we're very grateful that they're willing to help us with that, because we're looking for ways to, we're not going to be able to cut out all the traffic. That's not realistic. But how can we slow the traffic down? How can we remind people that they are in a neighborhood that actually has families that live there? Not just renters. We are getting more renters as people decide to move out because it's, the quality of life is deteriorated. But there are some of us who stay there and who actually enjoy our homes. So that's what we did. We provided a list. We'll continue to work with them as they progress through the system. Thank you.
Next person, Maria Castro.
Hi, my name is Maria Castro. I'm a new board member of Steeds Crossing, but I've lived there since 2019. The reason I liked Steeds Crossing is because it's kind of still country-ish, but with this new development, of course, it's going to change, and there's going to be more people, more businesses, which is good for jobs, but not good for traffic. And also, well, what I would like to express, my concern is the traffic that will accompany new developments next to Steeds Crossing. Traffic is already a pretty big issue. There's a lot of traffic accidents, you know, already. So it's already an issue. Then with the increase, more population, more people, more, it's just going to get worse. So I was wanting to know if who I can get in contact with, or how can you help with getting a widening the street so that way we can have an exit solely for turning into Steeds Crossing, because people are going super fast and then, you know, we have to hope somebody sees our turn signal so that we can slow down enough to safely turn into Steeds Crossing. And just, you know, it is kind of dangerous, and not everybody pays attention, obviously, when they're driving. The other thing I want to talk about is, let's see, let me get to it. Okay, so another concern is, I'm concerned that there will be an increase in littering going into Steeds Crossing. I started something in Steeds Crossing to help clean the community, and so far it's worked. But, you know, the littering is from people going through Steeds Crossing, you know, from other communities, and because traffic is so bad, they just want to quickly get to where they want to go. So I've worked hard to keep our community clean for our children, for our homeowners, and I just don't want that work to just go bad and you know, have so much more littering from people that don't even live in Steeds Crossing, and people that don't even live are you know, just trying to get from here to there and be like, well, before I get to my community, I'm going to throw this trash out, you know. I mean, it's, you know, it's going to, I don't want that to get worse. Right now it's working out pretty good. Also, the other thing is higher risk for crime because there's more, you know, people. So you know, that's my concern too. So I think if there's a way we can get more police presence and, you know, who do we talk to? How can we get that in place so that we can have more police presence? That way we make sure everybody's obeying the law. So for our safety. And also, of course, yes, and so that's mainly my concern is also the safety of our children because they have to walk to and from the bus stop to the bus. And also, you know, they want to go to their friend's house, take a walk, go to their friends. I mean, I'm concerned for all the more traffic that's going to be going through there. So I would like more police presence for sure. Okay, and I guess that's all I need to say. Thank you for hearing me.
Next person, Daryl Sorrells.
Maria, this is Andrew. Maria, thank you for stepping up and volunteering and actually doing something about the litter in your neighborhood. I know what it's like to be a community organizer, especially in my community, and it's tough. That's good work. Keep it up.
Hello, good evening. My name is Daryl Sorrells. I'm a citizen of this community and also a resident of Steve's Crossing for 26 years. I have seen this, our beautiful city, the growth, how it evolved 26 years ago when I first moved here. I'm very pleased of the growth and the development, and I'm gonna try to keep it very short and brief here with you guys. It's proof and self-evident, you know, our traffic here is getting bad like it is in Austin. And all the, you know, the growth, you know, it's so rapidly growing. You know, it's growing before our eyes. I know you guys are doing your best. The city is doing their best. I was able to lobby and advocate for years with former city street superintendents Wayne Granger, the code enforcement guys. They put signs in our neighborhood to try to keep the traffic down. And it's been like an uphill battle, you know, for 12 years. You know, that I start taking notice of this you know, just the traffic in our community. I want to thank this gentleman right here, who in the company he's working for, who graciously came in our community to do some things that we couldn't get the city and TxDOT to do for us for years, because everything that's been said that you guys have brought up and other members have brought up, you know, I can recall of speaking years ago to city planners and engineers about asking for all these things like speed humps, roundabouts like they have in Austin, and all these good things that keep our beautiful neighborhood safe. We all have to obey our law, slow down, respect our neighborhoods. We all have to travel. It'd be hypocritical for me to sit here and talk, because I drive through Derby Day, but I follow the 30 mile limit sign, you know, because their families, their children out here, they're playing. The school buses, I've seen cars swerve around other cars when people are driving and they're trying to get in their driveways in my community. And I live in Ground Zero on Steve's Crossing. But I'm gonna keep it short and brief. I wanna thank you for your generosity, for things that we tried to advocate for 12 long, hard years to get a right-of-way in Steve's Crossing. It's unfair to see how they have that right-of-way in Row Lane. We have more travelers. If y'all just come and travel down Steve's Crossing each and every day, morning, night, 2, 3 o'clock in the morning, there's cars. That street is still busy. I work in the mornings, I work at night, so I see, and I've done my own street study with my own eyes. That's my own data that I see. But thank y'all again. I'm all for development, but we just have to be safe, and we have to make it better for desirable for everybody. Thank you for everything.
Last person I have is Modesto Rosario.
My name is Modesto Rosario. I live directly behind the proposed development over on Morgan's Choice Lane. My concern is threefold. I think the first thing is what everybody else has been talking about, and that's the issue with the traffic on, especially going eastbound on Gaddis. We've got an emergency center there. There's a sea-level gas station being built. We've got the storage center. There's a huge apartment complex. There's now a clinic being open. And that road, I mean, you can tell is not meant for this amount of traffic. And because of the ditches on either side, it doesn't seem like there's an easy way to mitigate the issues that we're gonna eventually have if this proposed development is built to capacity. So, I mean, you know, development needs to happen in order for growth, but we can't fit a square into a round hole. I mean, there has to be a more of a consideration for how we're gonna handle that traffic. I mean, not just for quality of life, but actually safety, you know? How are we gonna get emergency vehicles down there and through that particular road if we're bottlenecked right there in that corner? The other thing, as everybody else has mentioned, is that, you know, we're gonna have a residential street become a roadway. You know, there's no avoiding it. There's no other way for these residents to come back into the development. So there's gonna be wear and tear, increased traffic, littering. These are all considerations. While I think they did a great job in, you know, trying to seamlessly meld themselves into the neighborhood, there's certain things that still have to be considered that, you know, are outside of this particular vacuum here. You know, and then the third thing is utilities. You know, we have water restrictions, you know, you can, I mean, throughout a good portion of the summer. And I haven't seen anything in regards to conversations that they've had with Manville, how that's gonna be handled. And, you know, we have occasional brownouts and things of that nature. So I don't know, outside of what they've planned here, which is very well planned, but the actual infrastructure, I think needs a little more foresight and planning, maybe not as much density, maybe not as many units, but something still needs to change, because as it stands now, in the way our community is set up, it just wouldn't support it, I don't think. So that's my opinion. I think they did a great job. I think they're, you know, I'm originally not from here, I'm from Chicago, and I appreciate them being so open and honest and talking to us. It's refreshing, but more planning needs to happen, at least in my opinion. So, thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else that wishes to comment? I have a motion to close public.
Yeah, I'll move to close the public hearing.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes.
I did want to clarify a little bit with the zoning as well. So for CL3, single-family attached, townhomes and single-family detached, assisted living, nursing homes, those are all the permitted by right uses. Permitted with limitations is condominiums, and then a specific use permit would be required for multifamily, which is also the same for CL4. CL4 is actually a little more condensed with the permitted by right residential uses. So condos would be allowed, and assisted living, nursing homes in CL4. But for the specific use permits, we would be required to bring a proposal to Planning and Zoning Commission with the site concept. We would be able to add conditions to the proposal as well.
What's the vertical restriction on CL3? The vertical development restriction on CL3? I didn't see it on the chart.
100 feet.
just to make sure I heard that correctly, you said 100 feet vertical?
If you do all the things that
So this is a bit out of scope for the Planning and Zoning Commission, but do we have any recommendations for the residents who spoke about which department of the city they should get in touch with about stoplights or traffic control in their neighborhood?
The majority of the emails have come through city departments and Public Works Department. CIP is aware of it as
Okay.
well.
Is it true that we don't have speed bumps in Pflugerville?
I was gonna ask
For
the
the
same
most-
question.
Yeah.
Evidence on their efficacy is pretty mixed.
On city streets, we don't, I'm not aware of any speed bump that we've installed. Private streets, they could consider doing something like that, but not on public streets.
Are these public streets or private streets?
Public streets are throughout the neighborhood.
I don't think I saw anything specific to Derby in the transportation master plan. It's intended to stay the way it is, correct?
I believe that's correct, yeah. So, there are conversations a little bit later on another item, so if there was
This big stack of paper you have in here,
Correct.
yes.
a desire for an addition, that would be appropriate.
I think it's worth noting that these are continual issues, right? And it doesn't appear that they're new. It's probably just a function of the development at the time, which would have been in the 80s, 90s, 2000. So,
Yeah.
it's hard to undo that.
I mean, I think great work you all for being proactive and working with the folks that are looking at developing the land. Sounds like you've learned lessons along the last 20-something years. There's only so much that we can try to do, right? Our influence is in very specific areas. So definitely glad that both the developer and you all have been able to organize. It's like you mentioned, it's hard work to organize community and get people to talk to each other. So kudos to that. And it seems like you're on a better path than you were, even if things aren't quite perfect yet.
And for the record, I'd like to apologize for conflating the names of the two divisions. I don't know the name of the division I live in, for what it's worth.
So we're anticipating probably needing a couple of specific use permits coming back soon, and then eventually we'll get into a site plan after that.
Prior to that, are we allowed to place restrictions on the zoning? So setbacks at all, or any type of vertical height restrictions at all?
Only if it were a PUD.
So for the height restrictions, it's, in CL4 is 60 feet and it's 100 feet with a density bonus. So they would have to have 60 units per acre and have their so they would allow up to 60 units per acre, and at least 80% of the parking would be required to be structured. So without the structured parking, 80% structured parking, then the max height is 60 feet.
And so that's CL4.
That's CL4, and then CL3 is 35 feet.
So theoretically, you could have a 35-foot structure adjacent to the property line, or within 10 feet of the property line, 50 feet of the property line.
There are also setback requirements as well. So over 20 feet, if the building is over 20 feet, so you would need 5 feet of additional setback space per additional 1 foot of height of building, and that would be for multifamily buildings that were neighboring single-family homes.
So that's 20 plus 15 times 5, is that right?
60, so 80.
That's pretty close.
I mean, a single-family home height restriction is probably around 30 feet anyways, right? So a CL3 is only kind of a 5-foot bump.
Okay.
Anyone wish to entertain a motion?
to approve rezoning as recommended.
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed?
No.
Chair votes yes.
Do what?
Yeah, one.
I was in that.
Thank you. Thank you.
So just as a quick notification, this item will go to the city council on the 25th?
All right, good evening once again, Chair and Commission. Nathan Jones again with the current planning manager of Planning and Development Services.
What was that title again?
I know. I feel like I need to introduce myself for the record. Item under consideration here is a set of amendments to the Pfluger Farm PUD. Again, just a little bit of background. It's a approximately 40-acre tract located along Pfluger Farm Lane. In 2019, it was zoned from the CL4 zoning district to the Planned Unit Development zoning district. The item under consideration, again, is requesting amendments to the development regulations for Phase 2. We have some numbers on the screen here that we'll go through in more detail later on, but the development regulations would apply to the area listed as 2 on the map.
Hold on for a second, I didn't read the item.
Oh, man, I got 2 stars.
Item 5C, ORD 0703, to receive public comment and consider rezoning application to amend the development regulations of the Pflugerville Farms Planned Unit Development, PUD, an approximate 40-acre tract of land located north of East Pflugerville Parkway, west of Pfluger Farm Lane, and south of Town Center Drive, to be known as the Pfluger Farms PUD. There you go.
Thank you. Apologies, Chair.
No problem.
Again, Pfluger Farm PUD amendments relate to Phase 2. Zoning on the site is currently zoned PUD. To the north of the site is CL5 zoning district, and currently it's developed with multifamily. Residential to the south is undeveloped CL4. To the west is another single-family based planned unit development. Comprehensive plan for this site is called out as mixed density neighborhood. So the mixed density neighborhood future land use is identified and described in the comprehensive plan to provide a transition between the more intense mixed use commercial that we see along the corridors and the lower density single family further towards the interior of the city. It's to act as a kind of a buffer or transition to the more traditional housing types of single-family residential. It also includes a strip of parks and open space, which identifies future locations of parks. So as I mentioned earlier, this is part of an existing PUD. The PUD that was approved in 2019 originally envisioned kind of 3 different phases to the development and a parks and trails system throughout. So Phase 1 was intended to be multifamily. Phase 3, well, I should say mixed-use multifamily, so there would be an incorporated retail commercial component to it. Phase 3 was anticipated to be a senior living facility. Phase 4 is the location of the parks and trails system, and then Phase 2 would match Phase 1 on the northern, on the other side of the private drive there, and also be multifamily with a additional retail component as well. The proposed amendments, so here I'll just walk through some of the proposed amendments. And again, these amendments would only relate to Phase 2, not the entire development. The proposal is to increase the maximum number of units from 473 to 583. It would allow 4-story buildings. It would increase the height maximum from 50 feet to 60 feet along Pfluger Farm Lane. It would also propose an increase in the maximum building height, building length of 300 feet to 400 feet along the interior road. And it would also increase the maximum distance between the accessible covered breezeway entries from 125 to 200. Here I'll walk through again some images of the concept plan that are proposed to be added into the PUD regulations. And here you can see at the corner between Rosher Road and Pfluger Farms as a multifamily, it's a kind of a vertical mixed use product. And then further to the interiors where you start to see more of the multifamily residential. And the detention is on the western portion. Here again are just some additional renderings. Part of the requirement of the original PUD was to provide similar architecture throughout so that it looks like one unified development. The renderings here are slightly different, but in large part match what was approved under the original PUD. This is just showing what they would look like with the additional height. This is another elevation sheet. And then here you also see an artist rendering. That concludes staff presentation. Staff recommends approval as presented of the PUD regulations. And we have the applicant here as well, who has a short presentation. They'll go through their slides and we'll be available for questions after.
Good evening, Commissioners, Chair. I'm Michelle Hausman, representing the applicant on this item. And my company is Land Use Solutions, and I will go through very quickly. I know it's late, so there's a few slides. Mr. Jones did an excellent job of outlining the PUD requests that we have before you. Rosewood Property Company is the owner and developer of this last phase of this development. When we went through the PUD process with staff in 2018 and 19, it was the same property owner and developer. So, and a consistent consultant team as well that you see here. In this phase, Womack Hampton is the architect, Pape Dawson Engineers are the civil, and Land Use Solutions, we're responsible for the rezoning case. So as Mr. Jones mentioned, the entire PUD is 40 acres, which is outlined here. And then this was an exhibit with the original PUD. The orange is the phase 2, and that is the last phase that will be under development. So phase 1 is 90% complete, and then the parkland tracks are the two blue ones you see to the west. Those are in the process of being dedicated to the city, and it will proceed to City Council hopefully in the next month or so. And then the pink tract is the senior living tract, and that was the tract adjacent to the Highland Park Neighborhood Association. And the PUD was able to restrict a very good transition from that neighborhood association, that property line to Pfluger Farm Lane. And then we worked with Mr. Frizzell and his team on the actual architecture to be an urban feel and an interconnected project, all cohesive. And similar architecture, it has the roundabout in the middle. Rauscher Road, you see that road that goes through, it's a private drive that was built by the developer, and it's in operation and will be there for this last phase. And as Mr. Jones mentioned, that small, I can use the pointer here. Do I push down on it to make it blue? Oh, there it is, sorry, it's flying around. So the detention exists right here. So I put this exhibit together to show that the PUD amendment as filed is on the whole 40 acres, but the amendment itself only applies to the blue tract. And so the increase in height from 50 feet to 60 feet and allowing 4 stories is only within the blue, and the other amendments as well. And so this is a greener conceptual site plan that shows where the landscaping is going to be located, trees throughout. And along Rauscher Road, there are parallel parking spaces so the public can go and visit the park and be able to drive in and out of Rauscher Road and onto Pfluger Farm Lane. So this shows you here the 4 stories that the buildings here along this southern portion of the property, and then here along Pfluger Farm Lane and Rauscher Road. That's where the 4 stories would be located. Everything beyond that point, these here are 3 stories on this back portion of the property. And the PUD amendment red line that you have in your backup material has the Phase 2 conceptual plan will be added to the PUD document in order to have that consistent look and feel to the Phase 1 that is 90% complete. So this gives you that general image, and it will be a part of the city's zoning ordinance document. And I'm available for questions, city staff supports, and respectfully request your support. And thank you for the time tonight and your service to the community.
Does anyone here wish to comment on this item? If not, do I have a motion to close public?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Carries. Discussion, comments, motion?
I'll
Kinda
move.
wondering.
I just wanted to ask, I know it's probably too early in the design, but are there going to be elevators in this new?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
All 3 and 4 stories.
Thank you.
Would you be opposed to having that as part of the PUD, as a requirement?
No,
Isn't that ADA anyway?
we're gonna do it.
Do you want to,
I should have introduced Tim Harris with Rosewood Property Company.
That's right, I'm with Rosewood. Happy to do elevators and state that in the PUD if you'd like.
Okay. Yeah, because I know there are 4 stories at the adjacent property, and I think those are walk-ups.
Horrible idea.
Yeah, I wouldn't recommend it.
Do you know which schools these feed into?
I got that written down, you don't expect a ton of families, but I can come back with that information if that's helpful.
Is this a age-restricted community?
No, this portion is not. The portion in the back is senior housing development, which is, I believe it's all 1 story. It's like a 12-foot ceiling, 1 story up against a single family.
And that's the Phase 3?
That's I think it's marked as, yes, Phase 3.
I think they go to Brook Hollow. I believe they go to Brook Hollow.
Brook Hollow.
I think my other questions wouldn't come until we get to a later stage around
Yeah, same.
parks and parking and things like that.
Well, and this is, like, you can see already the shape that this is all taking, and it's all part of one.
Yeah, it's gonna be a single block.
I move to approve as presented.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Unanimous?
Thank you.
Item 5D, RD 0705, to receive public comments and consider an application for a specific use permit for the proposed use of body art studio within the general business 1 or GB1 zoning district for an approximate 0.3 acres of land located within Unit 110 of 2512 West Pecan Street, to be known as the Vice and Virtue Specific Use Permit 2023-2-SUP. Is there anyone here desire to come? Sorry.
Go ahead. That's okay. Good evening, Commissioners. My name is Zainab Hayder. I'm a planner with the City of Pflugerville Planning and Development Services Department. The subject property here has submitted an application for a specific use permit. for the proposed use of Body Art Studio within Unit 110 of Pecan Creative Flex condominiums. Located at 2512 West Pecan Street, the business is to be known as Vice and Virtue Tattoo. So the Pecan Creative Flex buildings were built last year. And they're currently fully built out and ready for receiving tenants and certificates of occupancies. It was annexed in 1996 and is Zone GB1, General Business 1. Unit 110 is approximately 1,300 square feet, located near the front facing West Pecan Street. West Pecan is a major arterial road. The city's Aspire 2040 comprehensive plan in their future land use map identifies this area as mixed-use commercial. Mixed-use commercial anticipates high-activity centers with a variety of uses, including shopping, dining, entertainment, and dense residential. It's meant to be an area that attracts people. The General Business 1 zoning district is designed to accommodate a full range of retail and office uses within a citywide and even regional trade area. These type of commercial uses are conducted wholly within an enclosed building, and the uses in this district have operating characteristics and traffic service requirements compatible with typical office, retail, shopping, and high-density residential environments. So this is the Unified Development Code official definition of a body art studio, which I'll summarize as an establishment whose principal business activity includes artistic marks upon or under the skin, using ink or other substances that result in the permanent coloration of the skin. It is essentially a tattoo parlor. A body art studio is allowed in General Business 1, but only with a specific use permit, an SUP. Body art studios are not allowed by right in any zoning district in Pflugerville. So what is an SUP? An SUP requirement means that this use isn't allowed by right, and it is required to go through the additional layer of scrutiny through the Planning and Zoning Commission and City Council to ensure that it is compatible with surrounding uses. When you are choosing to approve an SUP, please use these as a rubric for judging the SUP. So is it harmonious and compatible with surrounding uses? Are the activities requested normally associated with the requested use? Is the nature of the use reasonable, and is there no adverse impact on the surrounding area? So let's discuss more about the project itself. Pecan Creative Flex is a row of 3 buildings, total greater than 30,000 total square feet. It is a condominium development, which means that the units are not for rent, but rather owned by the tenants. Unit 110, which is highlighted on the top left corner facing West Pecan, is the subject of this SUP request. Unit 110 is owned by the applicant, who is here today and will speak following my presentation. The applicant currently operates a similar studio for Vice and Virtue Tattoo located in Austin. The applicant purchased Unit 110 and intends to use this space for their second location. If approved, they will operate by appointment only and will not have walk-in traffic. Business hours for the Body Art Studio will be limited to 12 p.m. to 7 p.m. Additionally, the business has a policy of 1 client per working artist. According to their letter of intent, they describe themselves as a high-end tattoo parlor set in an upscale minimalist setting. They currently employ 6 tattoo artists, and they will have 7 associated parking spaces, which you can see labeled there, which satisfies the city's parking requirements for body art studios. Here are some of the immediately adjacent uses. To the north side, next to the water tower, is vacant land. To the east, to the west, you can see a DaVita Dialysis Center, and there is a self-storage center to the east. And south across the street is a flooring warehouse and an animal hospital. These are some images that I've taken. On the top 2, you can see the Pecan Creative Flex building itself, including Unit 110 there at the corner. The bottom left picture is showing the use to the east, and the bottom right picture is showing uses to the west. So one of the 6 guiding principles of the Aspire Pflugerville 2040 comprehensive plan is economic opportunities for all, which states the city welcomes new businesses and supports existing businesses and supports the growth of businesses that represent our diverse community. The plan lists an achievable goal for Pflugerville to increase the percentage of tax base from commercial and industrial properties to match the statewide average. Staff finds that the proposed SUP for the Body Art Studio meets the intent of the mixed-use commercial feature land use and furthers the goals identified in the comprehensive plan, taking into consideration the compatibility with surrounding uses, adequate parking capacity, and limited business hours. Staff recommends approval with the conditions on the following slide. These conditions were formulated based on concerns raised in previous body art studio cases and are sort of standard right now with all the body art studios that have been approved in Pflugerville. Number one, that the body art studio use shall be limited to Unit 110 of 2512 West Pecan Street. Number two, the hours of operation should be as presented between 12 p.m. and 7 p.m. and no later than 9 p.m. And number three, there will be tinting of windows, doors, or any other modifications to differentiate the suite from other suites in the multi-tenant facility, including but not limited to paint colors, murals, posters, banners, or similar. The applicant has already proposed to limit their business hours and will operate from 12 p.m. to 7 p.m. Will not be exceeding their parking allotment and plans to maintain their facades in a manner aesthetically similar to the neighbors. I will now turn over to the applicant who has a short presentation.
Hi, y'all. Nathan Aber. I'm the owner of Vice and Virtue Tattoo. She pretty much touched on everything, but I'm just going to go back and read what I got here. Is it how did I go too quick? Let's see. As a family-owned business with deep roots in Texas, we take great pride in serving our community and contributing to local economy. Lauren and I opened Vice and Virtue Studio in 2019. Just to touch real quick before I forget on what was mentioned before, we're not opening a second location. We're moving from Austin to Pflugerville. We're trying to get away from just kind of the busyness of Austin. Our location, we put great care and consideration in selecting the perfect location for our studio in Pflugerville. We are located in a brand new development called Pecan Creative Flex. This permit will be specifically for Unit 110. The $3.5 billion tattoo industry has experienced a surge in popularity in recent years with the growth and demand for high quality custom designs. Vice and Virtue Tattoo has 6 artists who mainly specialize in black and gray realism tattoos. This is a niche market that has a primarily high-end clientele. Vice and Virtue will provide exceptional customer service, maintain strict health and safety standards while fostering and welcoming an inclusive environment. We have 5-star ratings, perfect 5-star ratings on Google and Yelp with over 180 reviews. Our hours of operation, like mentioned, are Tuesday through Sunday, 12 p.m. to 7 p.m. Been like that for 7 years now. By appointment only, and the majority of our artists will have only 1 client per day. And that is something that we've just always have done. Health and safety of our clients and staff are our top priority. Licensed in Texas through the Department of State Health Services. We have routine inspections, and we're certified in OSHA bloodborne pathogen training. As a lifelong resident of Texas, raised in Pflugerville with over 13 years of experience in this profession, I would love to bring our vision for this billion-dollar industry to this growing city. Approval of this permit would give our small business this opportunity. Thank you for your time and consideration. And then while I'm up here, if anybody has questions.
Do they allow you to put like a sign or anything on the front?
Yeah, the sign is gonna be, cause it's a long, condo, so they're having the same size for every unit. Every business has to, it's kind of a smaller sign, to be honest. I don't have the measurements, but it's to go along with every other business, and there's no like exposed neons and like, we have a very minimal look to our studio. We don't have, tattoo flash hanging on the walls. There's gonna be literally nothing on the walls, pretty much. It's just real modern. It's a different type of aesthetic that we have in our studio. It's like no other tattoo studio here in Austin, not Pflugerville as well.
Maybe a question about the conditions. Maybe I'll just go through them one by one, honestly. So the first one was about being limited to Unit 110. Do you all have plans to purchase another unit? Is this is your spot?
Yeah, this is where I'll retire at. And if the 6 artists, if we ended up at 5, 4, 3, or it's just myself, that's fine until I'm done tattooing. So we would not want to do, you know, an expansion.
Got it. A similar question for the hours. There, it sounds like your hours currently are 12 to 7.
Right.
Frankly, I would hate to restrict you if you thought that there was a point in time where you might want to expand that.
I would not. If we expanded it, it would be, this is just like, you know, I was thinking about this before I came in here. It would be an hour, give or take. Like, we wouldn't ever change to later in the night. We don't want those type of people that are, you know, let's say drinking or last minute, spur of the moment idea. And, you know, a lot of our artists were all booked out almost up to a year. So it's just like a long, large tattoo, and it takes hours and hours to create that. So like for somebody to come in, it's just not that style. So it needs to be planned the night before an appointment. You know, it's just kind of how we, you know, how we work.
I do want to
okay with that too then, or you're okay with that condition then?
Absolutely.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
I do want to clarify that I forgot to mention earlier that you are all welcome to also add conditions or propose changes to the conditions as listed.
So specifically around the hours, I would also agree. I wouldn't restrict them at all in the event that you decide you want to sell your business to someone else. I think that would be detrimental to your potential exit.
I didn't even think about that, but yeah, I mean, I would like to be able to sell it in 10 years. You know, sure.
Well, or if you were to get an appointment at 9 a.m. someday, right, or something.
Oh,
like
well,
that,
we
right?
could still, if I wanted to come in at 9 a.m., I could still go in, but we wouldn't be open to the public.
Sure.
You know what I mean? It would just be like me, because I do go in before 11.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But it's just, you know, it's not like open.
Was for the staff question, was the time restriction proposed by the city, or was it proposed by the applicant, or was it both?
We added that in based on the previous SUPs that were approved for other body art studios, just to make it sort of standard in terms of and equitable with the other ones. But again, you guys are welcome to propose a change to the conditions.
I mean, an established studio that's appointment only, we could open that up, no problem.
And just to make a clarification too, in the previous ones, I believe the 9 o'clock was the last time that they took an appointment. So it didn't mean that it came 9 o'clock, they had to turn off all the doors, but it was the last appointment.
You don't want to work past 9 p.m.
No, I mean, I don't think anybody ever stays past 7.
Okay.
Out of curiosity, I noticed you labeled several parking spaces. Are you purchasing those, or are they just representative of ones you could use? It was just interesting that you actually labeled parking spaces.
I'm not sure exactly the question. We did purchase the unit.
No,
and so
the parking spaces, are they assigned?
The parking spaces, I believe the owner or the owner of the entire Pecan Flex assigned those spaces to him, because the way the condominium works is that there are common areas that all the owners of the condos, businesses share, and so the 7 parking requirements were meant to satisfy the city's parking requirement.
And they weren't near the 110 unit, right? Were they?
I believe they were in
Okay.
front, yes.
Okay.
I can show you. Yeah, I
Or, yeah, not in front, but yeah, near. Okay.
think so, yes. That's right.
I just want to say thank you for bringing a tax base to our city.
Yeah.
Thanks for coming home.
Yeah. I know. I actually went to high school in Pflugerville.
We played you in football where I went to high school. I move to approve the single-use permit, but strike the restriction on operating hours.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Item 6, discuss only. 6A, 2023-0303, discuss the 5-year capital improvement plan for FY 2024 through 2028.
Uh-oh, how do I get out of it?
All right, good evening. Andre Brinkley with our Capital Improvements and Engineering Department. I hope you guys have enough energy to stay the course here. We have an attachment that you all have in hard copy, just in case you want to reference it. But I'll be moving swiftly, hopefully, through these slides. So before us today is the 5-year, which starts with our fiscal year 2024 and moves on through 2028. So I'll get started. All right, just a little bit of an overview of where we're going to go tonight. We're going to kind of walk through each of the programs. We're going to just review our grounding in both our strategic plan and in the Aspire 2040 comprehensive plan. And then we'll kind of end up with where are we going. But I'm going to start off with a little bit of that too. So this is just a presentation just to get acquainted with what is going to be considered in our 5-year plan, and then specifically in 2024. There's no action that we're asking from you tonight. We are going to be back next month in May, so the pressure's off in terms of needing to make an immediate decision. But please feel free to ask questions. This is part of our stakeholder engagement, and we want any of those questions that have come up earlier tonight. I'll try and speak to some of them, but it's important for us to get input, to kind of calibrate, make sure that we're on point for this next year and then going into the next 5 years. Right, so a little bit on what is a capital improvement program, and I just want to point out this is actually marked draft, so it's the reason for us getting input, and we want to be very clear that this is an iterative process. Every year we go through this process. We take projects that have been slated in future years, refine them, move them forward a year, and pretty soon you know that comes into the view scope of this is the next fiscal year. Sometimes projects raise in priority very speedily. Sometimes projects kind of work through a funding process or work through several phases of development. So it's grounded in having a strategic plan focus, but this is really the basis for making sure infrastructure matches what our comprehensive plan is. So I want to make sure that we understand that it's something that changes. It can change within the year, depending on if we're notified that we have funding or we can get started on something sooner. These are program areas, so I'll think about it like a book with chapters, and in this case, we call them our program areas: transportation, water, wastewater, reclaimed water, drainage, parks, facilities, and information technology. A little bit on something you're very familiar with, but just to kind of go over the themes that are presented in the comprehensive plan. And I'd like to try and align some of our programs with how that meets with the comprehensive plan. So these are all familiar. They are hoping to create a better place for our citizens and the city and to build it. And so we talked a little bit about private development tonight, but this is really our public investment. Right, 3 key goals: transportation and mobility, infrastructure, community facilities, and public spaces. Those are matched up with bullet points over on the right, which are in the CIP. I won't reread those since I just read them earlier, but it's just want to make sure that we deliver everything that we're looking for eventually in that plan. It may take us a little while to get there, and there's always competing priorities, even within programs. So it's something that we want to represent as best we can, how we can reach that end goal. All right, so this is a little bit of a slide about the department, but it's really wanting to highlight the first step. We'll get into the design and construction, and some of these projects are in the design phase or in construction phase, but we want to really magnify how do we identify and come up with the list of projects. So here's a little bit about project selection. Of course, the comprehensive plan, I mentioned that. Master plans, so every 3 to 5 years we go through the transportation or water and sewer, or other master plans such as parks. And we may even have a new plan for our facilities on the horizon. But these are sometimes updated more frequently than 5 years. As growth presses on just different parts of our city, sometimes we have to go to a more frequent kind of renewal. And so the other part is infrastructure condition, the pavement condition analysis, or sometimes our water and sewer lines. We have to look at whether those will outlast within the time that, or will they need to be recapitalized, right? So we want to make sure we repair things before they get to be too expensive. And then citizen requests for service. So that's a lot of what we heard in some of the comments from citizens. They're requesting service or requesting a project or requesting a solution. So there's a lot of ways that we intake information. And then, of course, the growth and development. I think it's no secret we're growing fast. And sometimes where that growth happens, we have to address that very quickly, east, west, north, south. Sometimes it's happening everywhere. Sometimes, it feels a little bit like the movie title, Everything, Everywhere, All at Once. But I say that, in all seriousness, that we do have to make sure it's balanced and equitable in our approach to the whole city. That we don't ignore the existing areas of the city, or what we would call the original growth and kind of the heart of the city, but also where we're going. Okay, here's a little bit about how to read that plan sheet. And I want to make sure just to, if there's any curiosity about how that came to be, this is a format that is a little bit of a change from last year's. So last year's about 62 pages. This is many more pages. But this is an attempt to kind of show you how we want to break down and really get to some of the detail. So we work with all the operational departments to talk about what their priorities are and what projects they have, to refine existing projects lists, and also to think about why is this project needed? What is the justification? Not just what is the project, but that we record the justification. And this is our first kind of rattle out of the box, right, for this format of a plan. But this is just a representative project, what you see on the screen, but it's a project that you probably know about, our water treatment plant expansion. So the top two boxes we work on with the operating department, the scope and the justification. And then we work on the middle section, which is the cost estimates. And this is an area where we've really wanted to improve how we cost each project out. Sometimes we will start on a corridor study, and that's part of preliminary engineering. And sometimes we need land, and so we want to make sure we're recording that right. Sometimes we will fund it in a different year, and that's an attempt to kind of show that as well. Then we work with the finance department to identify the funding that then pays for those costs. So we've been through this process. We kicked off in December, and we met in January. We worked with finance for at least, I think, feels like the last 60 days, working very hard to make sure that we had all of the costs with matching funding, or identified where we needed to seek new funding. And it's probably not a secret to you all either. We presented to council on the transportation part of the CIP, and those costs are increasing. The same last fall on the water and wastewater CIP. So that's just a little bit about how you might, see if you're curious about a particular project. It's meant to be more information there for you, but it's really a tool for us. In the future, in the section just to the bottom of the photo, it's called incremental operating and maintenance costs. But as you can imagine, the city's growing really fast. We plan to work on that with our operating departments in the future to fill that out. So if we think about lots and lots of parks, or lots and lots of facilities, or lots and lots of things, whatever those lots and lots of, miles of pipe, miles of roadway, we need to also match that with what the cost of the maintenance and operations is. It's not just people, but it could be equipment, and it could be materials, and it could be programs to keep on refreshing those things. So that's an attempt to also be able to capture that so that the ground doesn't shift beneath our feet and we hadn't measured where we need to go. All right, a little bit about funding sources, and this is certainly not without being able to add to it every time. And we look at different kinds of debt. Those are the things that boxes are ending with bond. Federal grants, like something that may come from the FHWA through CAMPO. Money that is paid for by our citizens goes to the federal government, and we apply for and hope to seek some of that funding, so that's returned to us, and so that the city's costs may be reduced and our taxpayers' costs may be reduced. So it's something that we're looking into very heavily. Also, with state funding from Texas Water Development Board, our utility funds, so those are fees for service, and some of the other federal funding that you may have heard about, it's the WIFIA loan program. And we were able to receive the first loan in the state. And so we're looking at more of that kind of funding and hoping to be able to secure funding so that we can keep our program going. All right, so before I jump off into the transportation CIP, I'm just going to kind of ground us for a minute in our strategic plan. To become the safest city in Texas, you need city facilities, you need fire protection, you need roads so that our first responders can get there. So that's the way that I think about when I hear that. I think about the infrastructure that's needed. Develop economically, to develop economically to create fiscally sustainable city with a high quality of life. I think that different pictures jump to our mind about what's high quality of life. We can think about whether we got stuck in traffic or not, whether we were able to go to a park, whether we were able to walk around the neighborhood on that sidewalk, have kind of safe passage throughout the city. It's a lot of different things. But for me, I think the way to think about it is, have we built the things that we needed to build to have that high quality of life? Maintaining and preparing a robust, resilient infrastructure that exceeds expectations. That's a tough one, but the resilient and robust means that things don't stop, like the water doesn't stop flowing and the wastewater doesn't stop flowing either when we have an interruption to power. So we have redundancy and resiliency no matter what facilities we're building. And the last one, engaging community through vibrant parks, recreation, library programs, and services. So in order to have those services, you have to have the people, but also the facilities that provide them. So hopefully landed us down into our strategic plan, but we have to make sure that everything that we're doing follows that same, the same tenet. So we'll just jump into the transportation program. Roadways, traffic signals, one would argue even sidewalks and trails go into this category, but I've grouped them with parks. So traffic signals, also, whether it's an intersection improvement, all that belongs in the transportation category. So what I'm gonna do is I walk through, we're gonna have a map, we're gonna talk about some of the projects that may be near and dear to your heart that are already underway, and then some of the future projects that we have planned for 2024. This is a map that shows solid lines as our roadway projects, dashed lines as our corridor studies, and dots as our intersection or traffic signals. Just wanna make sure that this is, for those of you that may have seen the presentation to Council on the Transportation CIP, this is the same map. So the city limits, darker green, ETJ in light green. And this is a good illustration of how we have to work on things with the county, other stakeholders, whether that be Travis County, sometimes it's TxDOT, a little bit of what we heard from Williamson County, and keep all these projects moving as they're in different jurisdictions. So this is one that is already underway. We're just finishing design and going into construction. Hopefully in the next little while, we finish the property, securing all the property that we needed. And this is a project that includes everything, really. It starts with streets, but the streets are in really poor condition, and it's a wholesale infrastructure redo. And then Kelly Lane 2 and 3, I think the probably would be remiss if I didn't fill you in a little bit. So want to make sure that y'all know the project, the Phase 2 project is out for bid right now, and actually bids are due on Thursday. So that'll be a big day. And the Kelly Lane Phase 3 project is going to come closely on its heels. We're trying to do as much as we can to get as much construction going as possible with the big kind of comprehensive traffic control plan. This is our roundabout at Villamora. There's also some drainage improvements planned in Phase 2. So just wanted to kind of show a little bit about some of the new and more innovative intersections that we can do that will not hopefully create the backlog. This is going to have the throughput that we need. It's going to be 4 lanes with the neighborhood joining at the 2-lane. All right, this is a little bit on the timeline. Just wanted to kind of make sure that we talk about, we're starting with the blue segment and going into the green segment. So that ultimately where the green segment ends is Hottie, Seal, and Weiss. So we're going to have a brand new intersection by the time the Phase 2 and Phase 3 projects are completed. So I'll just kind of jump right into the 2024 plan. So our mobility master plan, it's time to update it. I believe it was 2019. We want to make sure we do it quickly. We want to make sure that we're on point with any of the things that might have changed. Signals along the Olympic Drive corridor, these are identified in the transportation master plan, but also we see the development pushing and want to make sure that we can address that quickly. And this is the initiation of work along that corridor. Weiss Lane widening, if you have driven at least to the high schools or any of the schools right there, there's also a fire station underway. There's a segment of Weiss that is not 4 lanes, and so this is that segment just north of Pecan or East Pecan to be able to address widening of that. Development is occurring, and we're going to keep pace with that. Seal Road, this is this corridor study right now. There's a portion that's in the city and a portion in the county, and so this is kind of going from the corridor study into design. Schultz Lane, as you can see, any Google Drive that can tell the pavement distress means it's a lot worse when you're actually up close and personal. But this is a project that we may have potential developer participation, nothing firm yet, but this road needs to be recapitalized. Fennig Lane, there's a right turn lane at FM 865 that's planned. Some of these turn lane improvements really help to move traffic along. So easing congestion is the main goal of that project. All right, I'm going to turn it over to Jeff, and then I'll turn it back over to me in a minute. That's right, keep going.
Good evening. Jeff Dunsworth, Assistant Director and your City Engineer. I want to commend you all for your dedication. It's a long day, and certainly appreciate your volunteer attitude and your willingness to serve. It's commendable. Just to get underway, that we have a considerable amount of utility projects underway here with the city. We're a growing, thriving community. With that comes needs. And you know, during you may recall during November, we presented the water capital improvement plan, and we had we have some major projects underway. We had 3 projects totaling $500 million. That's a B, billion dollars. It's a great time. It's phenomenal. It's a big undertaking, but commend you all. It's you're a necessary part to our process. But you know, this is how we do. This is our strategic plan. We're trying to develop robust infrastructure. I always tell that you know, water is a quality of life. Without water, we don't have development. We don't have funds. We don't have a quality of life effort. But currently we have projects underway to expand our transmission main, also expand our treatment plant. Sorry, moving to next page here. This exhibit indicates some of our water and our wastewater plans. The water plans, of course, are indicated in blue. We have a considerable number of large diameter pipelines. Some are not all shown on this drawing. And we have a number of wastewater interceptors and smaller pipeline projects underway to help serve the community. This is what I refer to as a legacy project. As a civil engineer, these are the kind of projects you want to put your name on. It's a 15-mile, 42-inch, large diameter pipeline, parallel and adjacent to our existing 30-inch pipeline. It's going to bring deliver raw water from the existing pump station in the southeast side of Austin, from the Colorado River, all the way up to our lovely Lake Pflugerville. It's you know, it's needed for growth. It's going to bring the water resources to help us maintain our growth. It's going to help maintain the quality of life at the lake, the recreational activity, water quality. We have a variable water level at the lake. We lose some of our water quality with all the plants and other organisms that start to take the place with the low water level. Then we have additional, we received the additional water through one of our partners, Lower Colorado River Authority. You may have been involved. It was a new contract that we negotiated, essentially doubling our annual production rate or raw water rate from LCRA. They're a great partner to have. It was great to have that water available when we needed it. Not all communities have that resource. It's just 15 miles away. They said it's here, we just have to go get it. You may be familiar in our water treatment plant expansion. We had a couple weeks ago, we had a groundbreaking ceremony. It was more like a celebration. It's a big undertaking, $140 million. It's it's a grand project. It's going to address our drinking water capacity through 2035, you know, and it promotes our pillar of the strategic plan with promoting economic sustainability and, again, robust infrastructure. Other projects we have included in our fiscal year water plan is the Clearwell rehabilitation. This is out at the water treatment plant. We have some looping water lines, and we have some lines to help feed our new pressure zones out on the northern development, the northern end of the city. Other projects include the 30 and 24-inch state highway project. This is kind of a looping project. It helps out our pressure feed, helps us maintain adequate flow, adequate fire pressure. We have other ones along SH 45. This is the one I mentioned. It's the northern end of our development, the northern end of the new development project out around Row Lane. It's going to help that area develop, and it's necessary to support new development in the new pressure zone. We also have a water master plan update. This is updated every few years, and actually we kind of issue addendums to update it every year. This is a great tool for us to control our assets or maintain our assets, to make sure that we have development that comes into town, we have adequate flow or adequate wastewater service where they need it. Like I said, it helps us ensure that we get our best value, are invested for the city, that we're good stewards for our taxpayers. It's a asset management tool, provides safety and adequate fire flow, as I mentioned. Moving on, we have some new wastewater projects too. We're going to increase our treatment capacity. We're going to add a new transmission or new interceptors to convey our wastewater flow. We're going to help maintain our existing infrastructure. We have new lines at Wilbarger Interceptor, Kelly Lane Interceptor, Sorrento Interceptor. We have some large diameter pipelines. Because of interest, we are essentially developing wastewater in two additional new basins. We have 3 basins within the community. We have the Central Wastewater Basin. That's the plant that you may be aware of down around the County Metro Park. It is being updated, it is being upgraded. We have a new plant proposed in the Wilbarger Basin, and these are named essentially after the creek. That's where all the wastewater tends to flow, is to the low area. So the Wilbarger Basin, and then we have off to our far east, we have the Cottonwood Creek, the Cottonwood Basin. We will be pumping wastewater from the Cottonwood to Wilbarger Creek for a number of years until we reach capacity at Wilbarger, and we may have additional plant. It's 20, 30 years down the road, but I hope I'm retired by that time at the Willow Creek. As mentioned, there's our Central Wastewater Treatment Plant. It's going to increase our capacity. This is in phase 2. It's new technology. It's to achieve we refer to it to BNR, biological nutrient removal. And this is to help us comply with our regulatory permits for our good friends with TCEQ. This is the new regional Wilbarger Creek Regional Wastewater Treatment Facility. This is currently been bid. We are in negotiations with a CMAR contractor, construction manager at risk. This is going to provide new 6 million gallons per day in additional wastewater treatment capacity. And it is also going to take one of our old, outdated, aged lift stations out of service. It'll make our utility director very happy. So we're looking forward to taking away that, I don't know if you can call it an asset, it's close to becoming a liability. So he wants that one taken offline, so we're happy to help him out with that. These are some of our wastewater projects. We have the Gilliland Creek, the Northwest Wilbarger Wastewater Interceptor, and numerous others underway. Here's our some of additional wastewater treatment plants. These are ones that we are directly involved with operation and maintenance. Also, you're aware of our what we call DTE, Downtown East Development. We'll have new facilities in place to serve that. It's necessary that we make all the necessary upgrades and have utilities in place when they're needed. also have our wastewater master plan. There's a new lift station. This is in the Cottonwood baseball. The Cottonwood is the New Sweden lift station. Operation and maintenance. We've got a state-of-the-art wastewater treatment plant at our central station, but we don't have our state-of-the-art operations building. We're going to upgrade that. We're going to give our operators lab facilities, good operation, good offices that they can work out of and be proud of their plant. And that was requested by our operations group. This helps promote environmental sustainability. The wastewater master plan.
Do we have, is all of our labs outsourced today, or is this a new capability?
We have some internal.
Oh, okay.
Some of the more high-tech, the BOD, some of those tests we outsource to, I believe it's Round Rock's lab. They have a full lab, but some of the titrations, the settlement, the single glass microscope, some of those tests we run internal.
Got it. I was just curious. Thanks.
And they're a great group of guys. Always got to appreciate the laboratory guys. And this is our, as I mentioned, the update wastewater master plan. And we also have underway the reclaimed water. This is a big asset to the city. We're currently spending a lot of city dollars irrigating parks. I guess the one that's really interesting is we use potable water to irrigate 1849 Park. I believe it's purchased from Manville. It's pumped to a lake, and it's pumped out of the lake for irrigation. This, regardless of the cost, this is a great investment for the city. It saves us money in the long run, helps preserve our aquifer, and it'll be a good investment, long term.
That's our first reclaimed water.
We currently have only one reclaimed water client available now. It's we provide reclaimed water service to the county metro park. It's a big area,
Yeah.
and when it's hot in the summer, they're a great customer. So it's their only customer, but that's why we're looking into the study.
Yeah.
We're trying to find optimum routes for pipelines, optimum routes for where are our heavy users that could benefit the large landscape areas. But we have to look and think ahead, plan ahead. It's a great resource. We have to move into the new age.
So, this will be new infrastructure, or are you allowed to use water?
No, sir. It'll be new infrastructure. We have made some provisions in our design. We took a number of lift stations offline, and we left the force main, the pressure mains from the lift station in place for future use, just because they're strategic location and we don't have to trench and put new pipe in. But there's a possibility that we could reuse the force mains for transporting our reclaimed water. So we have had some provisions or some forethought, but we're years behind some of the other communities. We need to, this will help us step up our game with the master study, help us prioritize, and help us assign funds to the proper location, and once again, trying to be good stewards of best value to the city.
Are you allowed to use decommissioned wastewater infrastructure for reclaimed water?
Yes, sir. It's, as long as it's clean, disinfected, before the contractor completed, they flushed the lines. We made them flush them 3 times. So, and it's, of course, it's a non-contact reclaimed, so it's non-filtered, so it's great for parks and other golf courses. And let's see here, drainage projects. Sorry, I'm kind of a stormwater geek, drainage geek. We civil engineers really thrive on this stuff. Impervious cover, C values. Just we can talk for hours, but I'll try not to delay you guys. It is getting late. We have a master plan underway, or recently completed the drainage master plan last year. It's our endeavor to put forth a drainage utility. It'll be a utility to help. Our fees will be able to help us fund operation and maintenance, as well as new infrastructure. I guess you've seen we've had occasional flood that just reminds us why we need major civil engineering projects to undertake storm drains. New Atlas 14 rainfall data is out, And it's kind of scary. It's about a 30% increase of what we've been experiencing before in a 100-year storm event. So with that, soon, not sure exactly when, FEMA's soon going to update their firm maps, the flood rate maps, and there's a number of our developments that are inundated.
I saw a couple on the list that are in 2-year floodplains.
Yes.
Much less a 50 or 100 year.
Yes.
Which means that's probably every year at this point.
That's probably correct. That's every year.
Yeah.
And some of those, that's how we prioritize our projects. The ones that have the most benefit, the community receives the most benefit out of the, minimum cost value. To help us prioritize all of those, we have projects in Emmanuel Road. We have the Wilbarger Creek tributary, Caldwell Elementary. This is one of my, it's not the top priority, but it's one of my concerns that there's a number of homes inundated. And when the maps change, there may be concerns that the insurance may get costly for those homeowners. So we need to try to move ahead of the game. We have conceptual plans for what we need to do to contain the floodplain, how we can, put our best dollar forward to help mitigate some of the improvements. And at that point, I will turn it back over to Andrea. Thank you, appreciate your time.
Okay, let's talk about parks. All right, so parks and trails, as I mentioned before, kind of group them because they're traditionally out of that operating department, but when we think about trails, I always think about not just recreation, but potentially the Transportation Connect. Right, our parks, just, a map that I think helps us to figure out how our parks are dispersed in the city. And the Parks and Recreation Department is planning on kind of concluding their master planning effort, and from that document, we may have more input. But the parks are shown here, and there's a good distribution, and they are, however, in some of our lower lying areas. We were just talking about drainage. So having multiple uses between drainage improvements and parks is already kind of a thing that we are planning to accomplish, but we still need more park amenities. So this is a park that is already in existence, but this is the next phase. We're planning some additional parking and lighting, but this is some additional fields. Basically, the phase 1 of the park did not accomplish all of the parking. You may have been out there and said, this is kind of an area that looks like we could just extend the parking, and that's part of what we'll be doing with that construction of this phase. This is the phase that's kind of on the hill.
1849. Is this a pretty major source of fees in lieu to build out since this is such a big park?
That is a question that I'm not sure how to quite answer.
No problem.
Yeah, so in the Parks Master Plan, there are sectors where we can apply funds, and so it depends on where the different location is. But regional parks are also able to receive that.
Yeah.
So, short answer is probably yes.
More than likely, sure.
Okay, so some of our upcoming projects, there is the historic landmark, our elevated storage tank. It's actually not in use, but it's been refurbished and painted, but this is talking about the land that's around it at the base. And then the next phase of Lake Pflugerville Park. So there's plans for all the great amenities around the lake, from boardwalks. There's future phases that are in your planning document there that are phase 3 and 4, but this is a really a good firm second phase. And in terms of the area that can be developed for recreational use all around, it's going to be unfolding for quite some time in terms of all the amenities that can be added, which is great for development as people can refresh and have new experiences as the years pass. You can continue to go to the same place and continue to enjoy it in new ways. Wells Point Park, this is an existing park, it's improvements, we're adding new park facilities. Again, this idea of we will not stop addressing and improving different areas of the park as the years go by. We might replace some equipment, upgrade the facility, make it safe in terms of the safety hazard that may have been there at one time. If you may be familiar with parks across the country at equipment that was all of a sudden, kind of deemed like, well, you can't have that, or you need this kind of base. So this is a part of refurbishing and making sure that we have all of those amenities up to the right standard. This is kind of a new one here on this sheet, the bridge. You all may be familiar with the trail that goes across Gilliland Creek along Emmanuel Road. So this is a bridge that, with the widening of the road, was going to be removed. And we didn't want to just stop at just remove, because this is a historic structure. We'd like to be able to repurpose it. It has to be carefully disassembled, carefully stored, and carefully refurbished, and then reassembled in a new place. Where that new place is, we're not quite sure. I'm sure there'll be some more information coming out from our Parks Department, but as a trail asset and as just a historic structure, it's something that we want to keep, and that's in keeping with our comprehensive plan, that we keep certain things of value, of historic significance, and bring those into the future.
It can't be moved intact?
Pardon me?
It can't be moved intact?
It may be kind of heavy, is at least what our specialists tell us. I had also thought that what if we could just lift it up, put it down, and could we go even at a snail's pace? I'll ask the question again, but we've consulted some bridge experts, and this is one of those situations that we kind of want to make sure that we can actually get it there in one piece. So that was their recommendation, to kind of take it, store it, and then reassemble it in its future home. So it has a storage place, but not a future home yet. But I'm sure we could all think of a good place. So, all right, for our facilities, this is an area that we, because of our explosive growth, if we think about even the building that Jeff and I work in, we're ready to have a second-story loft or cubby holes for people. It's the same throughout the city in terms of how do we face the future. It's not just, there's a lot of city staff, but this is about making sure that structures are there and they're resilient and they're able to house people that need to do things even in an emergency, or just for where the city is growing, right? So there's a discussion about having a facility master plan. This is a location that the city's buildings are in now, but also a facility condition assessment. As projects like Downtown East with the new City Hall and multi-generational rec center come online, what the repurposing of the existing City Hall on West Main will have is kind of a good discussion point. How we use the existing Public Works facility, and maybe there's the new Public Works complex. So there's a lot of discussions about what are our existing assets. Do we need to recapitalize those? The building envelope is an important component. I'm just going to get to that. I'm going to actually go back to Downtown East since I started talking about this. Basically, the heart of the building can't be ignored, but if you're going to continue to use it, you can't have an unhealthy building. The HVAC will eventually need to be replaced. We want to make sure that all of our buildings have good, basically, moisture prevention. But where these city facilities need to be, there's a lot of discussion about, is our existing PAWS facility set up for additional demand with the growing population? Should our library be expanded, or what is the future of that library? Should there be some changes internally? So just want to make sure that that's addressed, and that's part of what's going to be the endeavor. And instead of single purpose projects, have a comprehensive approach.
Maybe wouldn't gloss over either, maybe a minor metric, but certainly that's a recruiting and retention issue, I would imagine, as well, right? If you bring somebody in that you're trying to interview for a position and show them the closet over there, and that being your future office.
I think in some cases, many of our departments actually have a work from home almost as a necessity. So, we want to make sure that we provide the flexibility, which is also a retention thing. But yes, to be able to have all of our required co-located departments, that's one of the big things, that I just want to bring up as part of Downtown East with City Hall, being able to have the right co-location of departments, whether that's public records, whether that's city clerk, for people to have the kind of a public presence. And so this is just illustrative, right? We are still working through this process, but there's another step that's been kind of marshaled forward, which is the exclusive negotiating agreement. And so as this becomes more real, we have to start thinking about what we are leaving and then what we're going to, and what does that need to be. All right, I'm going to go back one a little bit out of order. Pardon me. Go back to the Public Works complex. This is a project that started for design. We're actually accepted proposals, and so we're going to go through a preliminary effort to start the design of that. And I just, had a circle here. You all may be familiar with where the water treatment plant is and where future Pflugerville Parkway will come through, and that's the location. So we have 3 departments. It's the utilities, operations, and the department that Jeff and I are in, and that's kind of a co-location's important because about 90% of what we talk about is all right there. But the heavy equipment and the materials that's needed, that does take up space, and we also need to kind of preserve as we think about the major debris operation that occurred. So where do we put existing heavy equipment? Do we need to, not hold off on providing some of that heavy equipment? So we certainly don't need to house our disaster kind of contractors, right? But what if those sorts of things we have as we're growing as a city? So there's a lot of heavy equipment that has to be accommodated, and it's kind of all crammed in, but that's one of the places that we have identified, and we'll be working forward on that design. So I'll just kind of step forward to technology. Some of our technology projects may be harder to kind of get your eyes and ears and hands around, but if I can just explain it as the library has an AV system project, and so as we move into that digital kind of age of, balancing between our books and our digital resources is something that they'd like to improve and deliver new services. And then those computer screens are meant to be kind of the, what we call CAD RMS, which is our dispatchers, and this is a very expensive system, but it's necessary because that's where our 911 comes in, and so we have a interagency agreement, and the police department is moving forward to upgrade that. And that's part of one of the essential things that we need to make sure that we plan for and can pay for. So just to kind of, this is our last slide, want to make sure we kind of sum it up with where are we now and where are we going. So today we're here on the first bar, and we're going to be stepping on to the next one. Next month we'll be back. We want to certainly take any comments tonight, anything that you may be wanting to bring forward. We want to record, and then we'll be taking those and also representing those to City Council. So as we can maybe refine our document in the next month and then present that, we'll be talking about funding. It's something that wanted to make you all aware that some of the things that we've funded in basically our transportation and parks bond, we've identified those 10 projects that were in the 2020 bond, about $101 million. That's the price of about 9 projects, and so we're looking at some differential. So we may be looking at an additional bond, even when you think about drainage projects, and they're essential. And when those new rules come out and we want to be able to protect private homes, and remove them from the floodplain or the floodway in some cases. We want to be able to continue to move things forward. That will be a key component that council will be kind of considering as part of the upcoming budget. So the final resting point, we hope, and as soon as I typed those numbers in, I thought, well, I don't know if September 13th is going to be absolutely right, but it's going to be hopefully close. It's the end of signifies the end of our budget process, and we'll be filing the budget. So there's a lot that happens between now and then, and so thanks very much for listening to the presentation, and be happy to receive any comments.
I've got 3 questions, and
Yes,
it's
ma'am.
on specific projects. Okay, the first one is the North Heatherwild Upper Gilliland Creek Channel Improvement. You may remember at the Pflugerville 101 at your facility, we had a woman that lives at the Cove. In this improvement thing, is there any way to get an egress from the Cove Yellow Sage north to Cactus Blossom? That's just a question.
Okay.
That would help them. The second one is the city fueling depot. Are we looking at e-vehicles at all on the horizon? And if so, are we having infrastructure issues addressed with that?
I can answer that one. We are looking, so different, when I think about how much rolling stock we had, and I just had a meeting with our operations director. So a lot of our equipment actually is like working trucks.
Right.
And some of our equipment maybe not so well suited to that,
Sure.
but some of the lighter equipment certainly. And as part of our some of our city development to be able to incorporate some of that, just like we did at the library
Right.
with those e-chargers. But just looking at perhaps other fuel sources, I think electric is the predominant one. CNG was a component for, we'll call it duty vehicles. And the city has currently a lease program. So as maybe we consider those kind of trade-offs for financials and what we look at in the future, I think it's something that is on the horizon. And I've actually test-driven a couple other vehicles that were specifically for duty vehicles, and they work just fine. So being able to think about other fuel sources, I think electrical is the easiest to probably plan in other than the storage. But the fueling depot is basically the idea is for city vehicles to have a place to, I'm just going to say, fuel up, whether that's liquid,
Right.
whether that's gas, or whether that's some other kind of power source, to be able to have two, one on each side of 130. So if we have a situation that is an extreme event, that we will not be at the mercy, so to speak, of maybe a freeway that isn't so forgiving of crossing at that moment, if things freeze, or that we have interoperability with some of our other partners. So that the idea there is to be able to co-locate that with two of the highest generators in terms of our rolling stock.
Oh, that's a good idea. My last and final question is on the fiber ring, the 96 strand fiber ring. Is that only for city facilities? Have you thought about, I come from a University of Texas background in city of, Gatton, the greater Austin area telecommunication. The city, Travis County, the state, LCRA, ACC, AISD, UT, they all work together. I'm going to say they because I'm no longer there. But I don't know if you've looked at Pflugerville ISD, Travis County, and I know the state's got a facility there on Wells Branch with the driver's license office. With interlocal agreements, it might be a really good way to help out with the funding of that project.
I'm glad you brought it up. The idea of having a fiber ring is to, and we're kind of working on a potential public-private partnership to be able to bring the idea started with having a dedicated city fiber network so that we could have resiliency and redundancy. When we started thinking about that, we started thinking about, well, there may be the opportunity to also build out some kind of infrastructure where there is not there today. So we have an opportunity to do something that the idea was to study it and to figure out what it was that we could do. And so we have a lot of water and wastewater and roadway infrastructure that's going in the ground. And the idea was to utilize that network as it gets built out to be able to provide that connectivity. So if we have an event, and let's just say we had one where a semi driver took the telecoms that was hanging aerially, and if we think about this would be something underground, that would be a lot more resilient. So the place that's also underground being a little bit more resilient is kind of what we're looking for. But basically it would provide all of the city facilities a way to have connection, and then from there that's the based kind of skeleton that we could build out from.
Thank you.
Great.
Also, a related question to that. I would imagine that broadband probably also falls in line with the community development block grants. Are you all refreshing the plan for the block grants over the next couple of years?
I think that block grant may be under planning because it's.
Yeah, there's not a good spot. Okay. Yeah.
So CDBG is through us, but I don't believe that fiber was something that was listed, but that's something we can look into to see if that.
Gotcha.
I have one question. Having served on this commission for over 2 years now, one of the things that has come up previously is what the city's future is for public transportation. So a couple years ago, I think there was the cart. It wasn't cart, but it was kind of a bus system, small regional. And I don't know how else to describe it because I'm not an expert in that. But is there anything on y'all's horizon that is considering kind of that next step from a suburb garden community to interconnectivity with like City of Austin, or transporting people to and from, you know, Round Rock, et cetera, and so forth. I mean,
I
is
think
that,
the biggest step we've taken is the fetch, trying to get that medium gap goal, right?
maybe that's what I'm thinking of,
Between
yeah.
where we have the end of maybe the line and then being able to be able to get to that last mile. But nothing that we have identified yet, but not to say that we can't start. So there's lots of conversations going in the area with what makes sense. And I think that the Fetch program was an attempt to, let's see if it works. It's wildly successful. So hopefully we can build on that and continue that. So, you know, one of these days we may have a good transit project, because I think there's certain components within the transit system or shared parking to be able to kind of connect and bring that forward. So it's definitely something that we're open to, certainly.
Thank you.
Getting it past the taxpayers of the city of Pflugerville, though, might be another thing, because they voted down ACC. I don't think I love public transportation, I really do. But we just don't have any.
We opted out of Cap Metro in like 2001, so it's been 20 years. We could talk about it again.
Yeah.
So comment and question. The comment is, in with respect to the fiber stuff, I would encourage you to look at either public-private partnership or even just doing it, the city does it itself, but think about incorporating 5G and 6G technology, because fiber is great, but you know, the wireless gives you some reach that you might not be able to get with
Thinking about the small
fiber.
nodes,
Yeah,
things like that. So
private 5G or whatever.
I think the private-public partnership is a great way to go, and that's something that we have been approached recently, so we're having some discussions, but definitely not leaving behind 96 pair doesn't sound so robust these days, and maybe we just were talking about, is that 144, or is it something else that connects to something else? And I think having a way for us to work on investment like that, whether that comes from the private sector, but to have that with planning and development services, some of the thoughts about being able to support that, and how does it look, and how does it connect, and how does it go to the electric network for its, you know, kind of the boosting the signal. So those are all things that are really important. Initially, the fiber ring was thought of as something to help the city become more resilient. And so as we've been thinking about it more, the scope can turn into maybe 2 or 3 things. So this one here is just that foundational step. So got some of your questions, and we'll go research and
Yeah, the
get
96
that.
is more than enough if you use multiple frequencies, multiple colors of light, as they say. The other question, and I don't want to use the word dump as it's not a negative, but has there been any thought of just dumping, I should say, putting all city personnel on that development that's going on at Con and 685 and have a multi-story building with just everyone there as a first priority before?
I think that understand where you're going, give everybody a home, that's the best spot maybe now. However, if we do that, our public-private partnership is also for some economic development. Multifamily and commercial and retail all centered around a common green with 2 public buildings. So those public buildings are pretty sizable. One's over 100,000 square feet in the rec side, and then City Hall with several departments that right now are in
How many
rather
stories?
tiny.
How many stories?
It could be as many as 3.
Why not? Is that in the flight plan, so you can't make it higher?
I don't think that we've thought about the flight plan as being like something to dissuade us. It's just, how much do you put all in that one place? And so when we thought about it, and I think there's been a lot of input and a lot of visioning and a lot of thought about how much can we put there. Certainly, not to say that we couldn't have even a temporary kind of like space where if we build out a commercial area, there's a building there that couldn't be, you know, leased or used for that certain purpose. But it's something that we thought maybe it would be a special place to build that community and that kind of thriving commercial environment. If we turn it into city office, may not be the highest and best use. So just trying to give a blend of everything, so it's not just a big government complex. So there's the, you know, kind of the 2 sides to that as maybe the reason why, but if there's room and we need it, we may go into one of those buildings.
Okay, thanks.
I have actually one summary comment kind of based on a number of things. So I had the privilege of serving on the Parks and Rec steering committee for the new rec center, and one of the things we talked about at our last meeting was, you know, we'd been spent 10 weeks discussing what we were building, and we've been discussing, you know, how we were building it. And then the question came up of why, like why are we doing these things, right? So it was really like, it was kind of what and then why, and then the last question, the how is what is what you just mentioned about like convincing the voters of the thing to do. So the what is the North Star, right? The why is because it's solving a problem, and the how is you know you have to convince the voters of how to do these things, and the voters are the ones that are the how, right? Because they authorize the funds and the money and things. And so I think the thing that I consistently hear among all of our volunteers is that everybody's reasonable, right? And if we're the representatives of the city, then you have to assume that as a really diverse, well-mixed, reasonable group of board members, we can expect that we have a pretty reasonable population that would support major projects or like interconnectivity, like hey,
Like the 2020 bond for the rec center.
yeah, absolutely. The massive thing, or like, hey, you know, is it reasonable to reach out to multiple interagency relationships to create things that make a lot of sense, where if we think about them now, in hindsight, it won't be like, why didn't we, you know, and I can think of a couple of examples that I won't rattle off here. But those are the things that I think are that we have a unique position in. This is what we discussed at the rec center meetings. As the city is growing exponentially, we expect this community to continue to be whatever it is. And if we can charge you guys with planning 50 years from now and saying, hey, look, this is the vision of what actually Pflugerville is. Aspire was a huge part of that, but just let's go a little bit further. Like let's not miss the mark and kind of get it. Right, and that was a huge discussion point in our rec center meetings too. Is that, you know, Pflugerville in some instances has almost got it right, and then they just kind of, oh man, we wish we would have done X, Y, and Z. And so I think that if you have a really good what and you have a really good why, then the how comes naturally, because we're able to demonstrate the things that we need to our voter base.
I think you brought up a larger planning window. So this is our 5-year, but I was really taught on the 10-year. So you may see in your sheets, there's a whole bunch of money in the 2029 column. That's because that's in that 5-year that we're starting to build that out, so we can actually show something. And we kind of dream the dream and then make it in the iterative process, bring it forward. So that's something that we're working on. Just wasn't ready to give you twice the stack of paper. And we want to have something that starts to go into that. And where we have something that may be unfunded, you know, we can bring that forward as soon as those things come. So shovel ready, thinking about things and being able to refine them for a longer period of time, and then spending true time in deliberation through the master planning process and giving ourselves enough time to kind of digest through. It's a lot all at once. And so to be able to be on point, we need to be able to hear our residents and talk through what is it that those things are bringing up, so that we don't miss something, or if there's a problem identified, we figure out the right solution. So even we talked about earlier tonight, State Highway 130 and 138. It's part of a State Highway 130 corridor study, and there's a number of interchanges as part of that plan that we're getting information on and studying it and trying to come up with, how are we gonna fund this? How do we, you know, talk to TxDOT about toll road? How do we, you know, come up with some sort of project list and then seek funding? So part of the relationship that you spoke about is already underway. We actually had our first meeting with TxDOT to talk about a number of these projects as they're adjacent to the toll road and what does that mean. We have an actively engaged group also with Campo, and we're also applying for some of the funding. We've already put in our transportation intersections in the transportation alternatives program. Hopefully that ranks well, but being able to be more aggressive with projects that will, for whatever reason, not just transportation, but water, wastewater, and even parks, so that we can be ready to make that compelling argument that it becomes the next logical step, right? So thank you for that, and I've written that down. Thank you.
One thing, and this is completely unsolicited advice, I really like the template and the sort of the
I
format
like
that
that
you've done.
template a lot,
I think
yeah.
it's great. I have one extra
Mhm.
idea, but I also realize it's work. I think it would be really nice. I heard you all talk about the pillars that it aligns to and the outcomes. That feels like it might be missing from your template. I don't know if that was on purpose or if maybe that's something you might consider adding of like, you know,
I
add a
think it
little
would
tag
be
on there
really
that
great
it's-
to land that in the justification.
Yes, I see a little bit of it in the
that would
justification.
work.
I like the
Okay.
justification. I would add, make it explicit. This is a resiliency project. This is a safety project. This is a, something like that, I think would make it punchier.
With colors.
Or, there you go.
And I don't think that's hard to do at all.
Yeah, I think I would, I think it would help.
And do thank you for printing it out. So that we can
Yes,
look
I'm
at the
sorry to
next
have to give
meeting.
you something to carry, but
No, this would have been a lot on a screen, so thank you.
and considering that most of us work with something like an iPad or a Surface or something, yeah, it'd be kind of, so I'm glad you.
This is great.
And I do agree the template's fantastic.
This is accessible on the internet. These
Yes, it was
screens will be
attached
sent
to the packet, and so if you'd like any copies, we can, of course, email that to you. Or provide a link, a share to download it, so that you can.
This is an amazing amount of work, and there's a lot of spreadsheets, so I know a lot of the financial, I can see
Yeah.
it back there.
Yes, Melissa's here.
Kudos,
Yeah.
kudos.
So, well, thank you very much for hearing us out until the late hour. We appreciate it very much.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
So just as a reminder, so this will come back to you at the next meeting for the consideration, and then it'll go to the city council on the 9th of May, which is also your joint meeting with council. So.
Which is why I'm glad she printed it, so that between now and the next meeting, I can read it without throwing my computer
It's gonna be
or
hard to
straining my
forget about
eyes.
this.
So at 10:18, I declare this meeting adjourned.
Yes.
Thank you.
All right.